All right, good evening, Littleton. Welcome to the Select Board meeting on October 24th, 2022. We will begin with executive session and return to open session thereafter. Mr. Clerk, if you'd like to read the motion, please.
The Select Board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Master General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. 3 Distribution Center Circle and 36 King Street, and to convene an open session thereafter.
I do so declare. Do I have a second? Second. Motion is made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. We'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Mark?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
And the chair is in favor, so the motion carries 5-0. We'll return at approximately 6:30 to begin our open session. Thank you and good night. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to begin our open session for tonight, October 24th, 2022. Thank you all very much for attending. We're very excited that you're all here. Let us begin as we usually do with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Clerk.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right. A quick preview of tonight's exciting agenda. We're going to have mail, followed by department and board updates, acceptance of a gift from the Mark Montanari King Street Realty Trust. We're going to discuss $2 million of ARPA funds for the water department, sewer department, fire department, acceptance of donations. Same for Elder and Human Services. Trail easement at 1 Douglas Street from the planning department. Bonds and notes, details from the treasurer, a request to hire Ann Essman back as a temporary employee for Human Resources Department, and committee membership review of the open space recreation planning. That will be followed by public input and members' updates. We will then have a section devoted to special town meeting, discussion of the tennis and pickleball park project, and a review of the warrant. Joint meeting with Finance Committee and School Committee at 7:30. And select board discussions will include Nagog Orchard fiscal year 2023 goals, reviews of some town bylaws, town administrator performance goals and evaluation tool, a request to authorize the PMBC to help manage the senior center, and discussion of the Littleton Common Revitalization Committee and its revitalization. And then we will have town administrator updates, lease extension for the VFW, and responses to an RFI we set out for affordable senior housing at Town Hall. Finally, we'll have minutes of October 11th. So, Mr. Town Administrator, if you'd like to begin with mail.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a few things this evening. The first is some programming changes from Xfinity. The next, we received notification that we have the vacancy in the MAPC for Littleton representative, which I would assume that was Keith Bergman, which we can put on the next agenda for discussion. We also received an invitation from Community One Stop for Growth announcement on the MassWorks grant celebration. It's Wednesday, October 26th, 2022 at noon time in Pittsfield. So, we'll see.
Right in the center of it all.
Right in the center of it all, right in the heart of Massachusetts and good old Pittsfield. And the last item, I'll yield my time to Sam Alvarez, who would like to request the board invitation, offer an extended invitation.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Sam. So Saturday, November 5th, makes 1 year since we moved in. So we're going to have a little celebration thanks to the Friends of the Library. They're paying for some programming for us to do and some food. So you're all invited Saturday, November 5th, 5:30 p.m. And if you have kids, we're having some programs during the day as well. Just look at the library calendar and you can see that. So I hope you can make it and I hope to see you all there.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, and congratulations.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, friends.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's begin. Next item is item 3A, $200,000 gift from the Littleton Water Commissioners via the Mark Montanari King Street Realty Trust. Mr. Begasic, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Ivan Pegasic, Water Commissioner. We're here in front of you tonight to get $200,000 gift that was given back to the Water Department. Get that gift approved for the CPC so we can maximize revenue, get the state match before we decide where the allocation is going to go.
All right, any questions or comments from the board?
Like that 30% match, it's nothing to laugh at. That's awesome.
What's the process for deciding where we're going to be using the money?
I've actually met with Park and Rec already, and we're going to continue our conversations. And when Park and Rec has, they believe a project that's worthy of it, they will come to our board and we will vote it at one of our meetings.
Is there a timeline or just,
Nope.
Any other questions? No. Okay.
It's like sweating up there for you.
Yeah.
You have the motion ready?
The LED lights? Yeah, no, they're not that hot.
Move that the select board vote to accept a $200,000 gift from Littleton Water Commissioners via the Mark Montanari 242 King Street Realty Trust on behalf of the CPC.
Second.
All right, motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you
carries
very much.
5-0.
Thank you, and thank you, Mark.
All right. Letter of intent to commit ARPA funds is the next item. Mr. Lawler?
I took the easy one.
Yeah.
Nick Lawler, General Manager of Littleton Electric, Light, and Water Departments. I believe Anthony spoke to you guys about this last meeting. We're a little short on authorizations needed for the SRF loan if we were to spend the total $41 million that we put in for, which we don't think we'll need the $41 million, but in order to secure that loan, we need to show authorizations in place to be able to pay the loan off. So we're about just shy of $2 million short of that. I know Anthony has been talking for a while now that maybe using these funds towards that. I think the letter that he had given the board last meeting talked about the use of these funds towards the town's betterment, which I don't think anyone from the Water Commission necessarily has an issue with, but that doesn't necessarily close the gap. You know, taking this $2 million and paying off the betterments doesn't, for the SRF folks, close that gap. So I think that's why maybe it got held from last meeting and got asked to come in here and explain it to you. I
Thanks.
know we talked about it at one of the sewer
Yeah.
meetings. I don't know if there's any questions that came out of that or questions from the rest of the board.
Yeah, I think some of the questions I had really are coming from the finance team, FinCom. Some reached out to me, they saw this in the packet, and you might have just answered some of those questions just now, but heavy concern about the betterment, obviously, for the town facilities, and just trying to make sure that it's becomes a priority of
Yeah.
your board when this comes up, that this money can be used towards that.
Yeah, I think what we had told Chuck and Matthew at the last meeting was even capture that in the minutes, capturing the vote.
Yeah.
It's not the intention of the Water Commissioners not to use it that way.
Okay.
And I think the finance team, the select board, and the commissioners have a lot of conversations that need to be had about how this project is paid for.
Okay.
And I don't think this letter is going to obligate us to do anything with the money. We just want to show that we're interested in applying it towards the sewer project.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so, okay. Any other comments, or, all right?
I don't know that I'm comfortable signing the letter without the MOU in place, without that language in there. I understand it's the intent of the water commissioners, but we don't have an agreement that says that somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, maybe.
you announcing it here, you can't really represent that the board voted that way. So that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, we're under a little bit of a time crunch with the SRF folks. It's a 1.5% interest loan, 30 years, which, you know, we're jeopardizing losing that access to that loan.
And ultimately, if the amount of the project is reduced by the $2 million that we use from ARPA funds, which is allowable under the infrastructure improvements, it's $2 million and it's going to be reduced, the whole project's going to be reduced by, therefore, lowering our investment.
But nevertheless, I understand Mark's concern.
There is, I mean, there's a unwritten agreement that this money is applied to the betterment, but there is no agreement that is applied to the betterment. So Nick getting up here and saying in our meeting that they intend to doesn't mean that they will.
Right,
So-
but-
So,
Can I jump in? for a
Yeah, go
second?
for it.
So right now, what you're saying is there's an intent. You actually haven't taken the vote that you will need to take later, which says you're gonna commit it. So right now, it's just the intent is to use $2 million, and Nick and I discussed this, and we can memorialize in an email that it's the board, if this is the wishes of the board, to fully expect that our betterment be taking from that $2 million. So you're not committing really tonight, you're just saying in its intent. And that, I think, satisfies what Nick needs for the SRF loan application, is that right?
Satisfies the state.
Yeah, it's really the state that we need to satisfy.
so where is that intent recorded?
Tonight, when we take
Well,
a motion and.
in your
It's in the
motion.
mo- I mean, it's not in the letter.
Right, it isn't in the letter, but
So-
nor is there any, nor is there any documented statement that it will be used for
Okay.
anything other than the betterment, if you, like,
Okay.
in other words, we haven't committed one way or the other.
So there's the motion mark up there right now, which, there's
Okay.
option one and option two. Option one was leave the letter as you saw it at the last meeting. Option two is just take out that sentence that says, that makes reference to our betterment.
Okay, so we're saying by having it in here that says we intend to do this, we're not committing to do this.
That's
We could have
exactly-
easily have just said we're intending to give them 40 million, right? And we're
I think we're
no
doing
more on
everything
the
Well,
else.
except you don't have 40 million. You do have 2 million in your possession, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
we might be back in 2 weeks with the SRF folks saying this letter wasn't appropriate.
Needed.
You know, we need more
Oh.
conversations, but.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark, your concerns were mine 2 weeks ago, for sure, and this is why I know you guys, I appreciate you guys coming in. But I'm going to take this as in good faith, that this discussion has taken place. It's been now on, I think, 3 of our agendas, at least, talking about it, and the importance of the town being able to use some of this money, which we don't think is going to be 2 million anyway, towards the betterments.
No,
be, but-
the estimates for the betterment, if we were to expend the full 41 million, was 1.5 million for the town.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll be knocking on the door over there, for sure, so, but, yeah.
So,
Okay,
you make
We
the
look at
motion.
option 2
Option 2.
for the letter.
Yes, option 2 for the letter.
Move the chair sign a letter, option 2, to the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department, General Manager Nicholas Lawler, of our intent to commit $2 million in ARPA funding to the Littleton Sewer Expansion Project.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
All right.
Thanks.
Fire Department, Mr. Clancy, dressed as I've never seen him before.
Wow.
You clean up nice.
You know, when you wear Garanimals every day, when you get a chance, you just
That's right.
gotta put something else on. Thank you for having us tonight. We're here to try and ask if you'll approve the $2,500 donation from DCU for the betterment of senior citizen smoke detectors, for that matter. So that's generally where these funds are used. Annually, they donate money to public safety, unsolicited. They've been a great corporate partner, and our intent is to take that $2,500 and put it into our senior safe account to purchase smoke and CO detectors for senior citizens' homes that either need new ones or don't have them. So it's a program where you think you've hit all the houses, and every year they keep calling. So thanks to Elder and Human Services for advertising our services. We're always busy with that
Great.
program, so that would be appreciated if the board would include that money. And I like coming getting money like this, 'cause
Yeah.
it's easy.
And
Yeah,
also,
instead of
thanks,
asking
DC.
for money.
Thanks, DCU.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any comments or questions? There we go.
That's great.
we should have the dress code standard,
We should have the what?
the dress
Oh,
code
the dress
standard
code,
for
yeah,
accepting.
that's actually,
Casual Monday?
Steve Venuti said he was getting dressed up, so I did. And then
we just won't listen to anyone who does not wearing a blazer.
But for $2,500, that's pretty impressive.
But the fact that it still fits, I don't even want to tell you how old this coat is.
All right, Chuck, go ahead.
Move the select board vote pursuant to Master General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, and per its policy on solicitation and acceptance of monetary and non-monetary gifts for public purpose, to accept a donation to the fire department from Digital Credit Union in the amount of $2,500 to be deposited into their gift account for community involvement.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very
You're
much.
rich, you're rich.
Thanks, Tom.
Elder and Human Services, acceptance of a donation. Good evening.
Gonna call him Donald Sweater.
What's that?
This is a nice sweater.
Good evening. My blazer. Okay, good evening. Liz Trudiak, Director of Elder and Human Services. I am here tonight to request the acceptance of 2 gifts that we received for the TREAD program. TREAD, as you know, is tax relief for the elderly and disabled. This year, we had our highest number of applicants ever, 18 applicants. So this money comes very timely, and we're absolutely thrilled to have received it. The first donation was $1,000 from Kathy Coughlin, and the second donation was $1,000 from David Harding.
Great, thank you. Any comments from the board, or we'll go straight to a motion?
Move the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, and per its policy on solicitation and acceptance of monetary and non-monetary gifts for public purpose, to accept a donation to the Department of Elder and Human Services, EHS, in the amount of $1,000 from Kathy Coughlin and $1,000 from David Harding for the TREAD Fund for the purpose of tax relief to the elderly and disabled.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Kathy and David.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Okay, Planning Department, request to accept trail easement at 1 Douglas Street.
Ryan's going to take
Sure.
that
Okay.
from Larry.
We can take this. So, as the board is likely aware, we voted at the last meeting to accept Douglas Street as a public way. So, one of the components within this is to also accept an easement for a trail easement right at the end of Douglas Street. As you can see up on the graphic, right at the end of that is a 10-foot trail easement. So this is part of the closeout when we accept a roadway. There's multiple components that we're looking to close out and make it complete before it goes before town meeting. This is one of those items, and we're requesting the board approve of and accept the easement at the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
This is the trail that cuts through the yard, correct? At the end of the Harwood
Yeah, we
Trail.
call this, sir.
So you can kind of, there's the
Yeah,
forest.
there.
bigger
Yeah, that's
picture, yeah.
That's where I think it is.
Yeah.
So my only comment is, reading this, it says that the grantee shall reloam or recede the easement area as needed. So we're committing the highway department to maintaining that portion, and how are we managing that? Who's keeping on, how is that relationship and management going to be handled?
Well, you know, I mean, no, sure. I mean, I think that this was something that we anticipated. We don't anticipate there being a significant amount of work necessary to maintain this on a regular basis, and I think it's something that we're working with the homeowner to work through. But meaningfully, it shouldn't be anything over the top. But it, more importantly, it provides for access through this parcel and you know, for the trail. So.
Oh, I think it's great to have the access. I'm just worried about the maintenance aspect that we're signing up for and that we're not prepared for it, that's all.
Well, it's really the conservation easement when you think about it, right? This is just an extension of their trail that comes out of the woods right there. So what, 30 feet?
But it's the grantee is responsible for it, it says
Yeah.
in the language, which would be the town.
Yeah. I'm more than happy to accept the trail. I think it's a great
Yeah.
asset to the town. I just want to make sure that we're prepared to maintain what we're accepting.
I think it's something we'd also work with the Conservation Commission on, and, you know.
Land stewards and
Yeah,
that kind of
to make sure that we're.
They
keeping
maintain
it-
all our trails now. I'm not
So-
aware of our DPW doing
Right.
anything with trails, so.
Yeah, but I don't know of anyone in the LCTV that goes around reseeding any areas either, so they mow areas when they're, that's not what this is asking for, this is asking for seeding. So that's,
Yeah, and
different.
could this be a boardwalk project too? I don't know.
Gravel
Coming all the way
path.
out to the
Well, that would be a different agreement with them probably. So,
We're gonna have to do something after the fact, is what you're saying, basically.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If you're ready.
Do we want to, okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead
Okay.
and accept it.
Move the select board vote to approve the trail easement located at 1 Douglas Road contingent on the Conservation Commission accepting the easement at their meeting on October 25th, 2022.
Second?
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Great. Human Resources Director.
No.
No.
Good evening.
Treasurer, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry, Treasurer Collector. My bad. Just keeping you on your toes.
Good evening. Steve Menuti, interim town treasurer. To keep up with the water department theme that we have going on here tonight, we're here to approve interim financing for the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust in the amount of $24,534,937 for the Whitcomb Ave PFAS project currently underway by the water department. There's currently a $15 million note that's being increased to this $24 million because of the project increases that the water department has had. We accept this note at 0% interest, by the way. It'll be bonded in November, a year from this month, November of '23, on a 30-year schedule. So the vote is in the packet. Are there any questions for anything? We'll be back next meeting with some interim bans. We're having a ban sale on Tuesday of next week. So we'll be back for approval of the bans for this project and for the sewer project.
Great.
I guess I just, is FinCom been briefed on that one yet?
On which?
On that particular project for the?
The Whitcomb Ave project?
Yeah. Has that been brought in front of their board? I don't know.
I haven't gone in front of the board. I don't know if the
You mean
water department
borrowing
has.
for it?
Yeah,
Borrowing's
just for
already
that.
approved at town meeting.
It was approved. Okay. So this is just,
Actually going through with the
The
borrow.
placement of the bonds, right?
Yep.
Pardon?
This is the issuing.
This is the drawdowns. This is funding the project today. So they're taking drawdowns as they work in the project.
Yeah.
They submit the eligible costs to Mass Clean Water Trust. They get reimbursement for them. At the end of the project, they'll have $21 million or so in reimbursements that they've accumulated, and then the project is bonded through Clean Water Trust, again at 0% interest.
Great.
For 30 years.
for the life of
30
it.
years.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Question from finance.
Any questions from the Finance Department?
Well, no, just, I guess to answer Mr. Wilson's question,
Yeah.
the finance committee has not
Yeah.
officially.
But you wouldn't argue 0% loan, so I guess.
0%.
Great.
It's the best you could do.
Yeah,
All right.
it'll be a different story next meeting.
Yeah.
We're ready for the motion then.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, this is the long,
Yeah.
the full throat. Take a deep breath.
Move the select board vote to, 1, that the town shall issue a bond or bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $24,534,937 of the bonds pursuant to chapters 29C and 44 of the general laws and votes of the town passed May 7th, 2018, Article 19, October 28th, 2019, Article 12, and October 18th, 2020, Article 10, for planning or construction of drinking water infrastructure, the project. 2, that in anticipation of the issuance of the bonds, the treasurer is authorized to issue an interim loan note or notes from time to time in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $24,534,937. And 3, that each bond or note shall be issued as a single registered security and sold to the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust at a price determined pursuant to the financing agreement. 4, that the treasurer is authorized to determine the date, the form, the maximum interest rate, and the principal maturities of each bond and note, and to execute a financing agreement with the trust with respect to the sale of the bonds and notes, such date, form, and maturities, and the specific interest rates of the bonds and notes to be approved by a majority of the select board and the treasurer and evidenced by their execution of the bonds or notes. 5, that any certificates or documents relating to each bond and note, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original, and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file or other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document, and electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents and all matters relating thereto, having the same legal effect as original signatures. 6, that all action taken to date by the town and its officers and agents to carry out the project and its financing, including the execution of any loan commitment or agreement by the treasurer, are hereby ratified, approved, and confirmed. And 7, that the treasurer and other appropriate town officials are each hereby authorized to take any and all actions necessary or convenient to carry out the provisions of this vote, including execution and delivery of the financing agreements, and the project regulatory agreements relating to the project.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All
was
those
easy.
in
Second.
favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I wanted you to read it again.
5-0.
back to number 5?
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
There's some documents that you need.
Great.
Thanks,
All right,
Steve.
HR, now it's your turn.
Just right here.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Michelle Vibert, Human Resources Director. I'm here tonight to request the board's approval to hire former Assistant Treasurer and HR Administrator Ann Essman as a temporary employee to assist the Human Resources Department for no more than 3 to 6 months and not to exceed a maximum of $30,000. What we're looking for support on is we have a retiree database. We're looking to rebuild that database, which is required for a lot of auditing, reporting, state reporting purposes, and other benefit functions that need to be done within the town. We're looking for her help on auditing and reconciling the full suite of current benefits and processing any discrepancies. There's a lot of cleanup work that needs to be done, and it's beyond our capabilities of the current staff that we have. We're also looking for her support. I like to say that when Steve and Ann were here, it was a well-oiled machine that they ran. Systems exist in place already. We're looking to basically turn the clock back 2 years and use those systems that were in place, that were structured, organized, which doesn't only benefit the Human Resources Department, but it benefits all departments. We're also looking for her assistance in reconciling monthly payments to our Mass Teachers Retirement System and Middlesex County Retirement System. And audit and reconcile, we had a Mass Teachers Retirement System deduction error. It looks like the Mass Teachers Retirement System, when you send them the current rates for the plans, they inadvertently swapped the HMO family plan for the HMO individual plan. We want to make sure that people have been charged correctly, and that everything is back to normal. And I think the last bullet point, we do have some special projects that do come up that Ann would be great at assisting with. The rate I've proposed is an hourly rate of $47.24, which is based on grade 12, step 5. And we would hope that if the board's approval is issued tonight, that she would be able to start on Wednesday, the 26th of this month.
Thank you. Any comments from the rest of the board members? This is a database that she knows already?
Yes, so it's a database that exists. It just hasn't been kept up with over the last 2 years since she left. So that is one component of the scope of work she would be doing.
Comments?
I would just take advantage of her while she's here as far as it relates to everything HR, because I know you weren't here to have that kind of handoff with her. So she's got a lot of information that I know will be very helpful to you with a lot of this stuff.
It is a great opportunity with knowledge not only on, the discrepancy side and helping us process, but and also learning those processes that were in place and utilizing them.
Yeah, awesome.
Any other comments? Nope. All right. Yeah, Mr. Clerk, do you have a motion for us?
Yeah, so I just had a question on the motion, not on anything
Sure.
else. Does this have to say up to $30,000?
Number not to exceed,
Number not,
or we just,
we can monitor it. If you want to put that in there, that's fine. If not, certainly something we'll monitor and not go over that.
It's like 600 hours, just under 600 hours.
So if I could
That's what's
help with
I
that,
mean,
so,
the letter said 3 to 6 months
Yeah.
and 30,000, but the motion doesn't say that. So I'm just asking if the motion should say up to $30,000.
I was basing it off of the line item that this will be funded from, which is underneath the human resources budget, which is half of that line item, if she was to go the full 6 months.
Okay.
If we want to include that, I just trust that we're getting kind of a,
I mean, if it goes 7 months, what
I
happens?
fully don't expect it to go 6 months. I'll be before the board. If we had to, if this is extending on, then we'll be having another conversation.
Yeah. My concern was more if the 600 hours spilled over 6 months. We don't want to be locked into 6 months.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
can move the select board vote to approve of the temporary appointment of up to 6 months of retired assistant treasurer / human resources administrator Ann Essman at an hourly rate of $47.24 based on grade 12, step 5.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee membership.
This was, if I may, Mr. Chair, this
Yes.
was thrown on the agenda. I think it was the last meeting, the select board voted to create this committee with these positions, with the membership that's outlined in your packet. When you made that commitment, you asked to have an opportunity to review it again at another meeting and see if you wanted to make any adjustments, add on any additional members, et cetera.
I think you weren't here, Chuck, so a lot of that was making sure that you had a chance to review it. I'm not going to suggest any changes to these 7 at this time.
Can I make a
Yeah.
recommendation, if
Yeah.
I may, Mr. Chair? So Alicia's here, right? So I looked at the composition of the previous Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee. One position that they did have that I thought was really helpful was someone designated as administrative support for that committee. I just know it's difficult with any committee, keeping minutes and keeping track of workflows and things like that. So I didn't know if that was a consideration for this newly structured committee that she might want to consider.
So Alicia is our staff point person, so I'm sure she's what we're counting on for staff support, so.
Okay. Yeah,
Good.
I didn't know if it would be too much for you personally to be the administrative support piece of the committee as well as trying to oversee the committee. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever you decide, I'm happy to go with and we'll make it work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have anyone we can,
Well, it was
Apply the
interesting, so
problem.
it wasn't a staff person that was the administrative support person for the
Like a
previous committee. It was a resident.
oh, I see.
So that was their designation on the committee. It was 5 members, and then there was one person designated as administrative support, but they weren't a town employee.
Not a voting member? They're not a voting member, they're just administrative support?
I don't know what voting rights they had, but that was their designation. So it was kind of like it was like a addition volunteer position,
They wouldn't have been.
designated specifically
So then
to
that-
administrative support. It wasn't a town
Got it.
employee.
Like a tax work person or something like that?
Yeah, so we can, I mean,
I
obviously
mean,
they
it's,
can
I just
attend,
figured
right?
I'd mention it because they
Yeah.
utilized it last time, so.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But we don't need to put it into this motion, I don't think, because they're not going to be a voting member of the committee.
Right,
Yeah.
or I don't know if they were at the time or not, I didn't look
Okay.
into the minutes, I'm not sure. That was my only suggestion.
Yeah, my concern, not really concerns, I guess my questions, and I see we do have a member of the Disability Commission, and Liz is here with, can speak to the aging population and that, do we want a member from one of those committees, at least that can speak to some of those challenges when it comes to this recreational, open space type of planning? That's always a piece that can easily get left off, and I didn't know if one of these others that are on here can address that,
Or the
Potentially.
citizen- Or the citizen at large.
or the citizen at large potentially, but it's just something that you're both here, and I didn't know if that was something that, yeah, please, thank you.
Hello, Alicia Day, Parks and Rec Director. So I just wanted to be clear, the last time that we went through this process, I had just started working here, and we were working with MAPC. And when we did that, I actually went out to the parks with her, and we measured for grade and everything. So that is part of this whole process, is to make sure that we know what the issues are with accessibility and to make sure that we have a plan. So one of the goals in there was specifically trying to work these spaces up to being more accessible.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I appreciate you guys waiting.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
So we need a motion
We can always
tonight
do that. I don't think we
to
do. You guys made a motion.
formalize this?
Nope, you
Nope, okay.
already made a motion,
Great.
unless there was gonna be changes.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
I think we just have that caveat that if there is the need for additional administrative help, that we would basically fund
Expand the
a tax
membership.
work-off person or something, you know,
Right.
not necessarily fund, but allow for a tax work-off person.
Okay, public input and members' updates. If anyone would like to address the select board, feel free to step up to the podium. Jerry?
Laser night.
Jared Elpiori, New Estate Road. I see there's another article regarding a plastic bag ban. I've put some information together regarding the environmental impact of paper versus plastic. I'd like to present this both to the board now and at the town meeting. This is very similar to what I was doing a while back.
Did you email that over to Tim too, Jerry?
I gotta do a few updates. I'll email it like tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be great. Perfect, thank you.
I never heard back from them one way or the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's actually quite interesting when you look at the environmental impact. Plastic has a lot less in terms of what it takes to make the stuff than paper or even reusables.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Nope.
Hi, good morning, Fox Lane. I sent over to you earlier this week a petition that we've been gathering signatures for about the gun dealers at the mill. I just wanted to read the petition and also give you an updated list. We've collected some more signatures since then. We, the citizens of Littleton, are writing to express our opposition to the 80-plus gun dealers located at 410 Great Road. This location is less than a mile from Russell Street in the middle school complex. It is right in the heart of Littleton Common. In the United States, 40,620 people are killed in an average year by guns. Homicide by gun has increased 70% from 2011 to 2020. Research is clear that more guns in a community leads to more deaths through homicide, suicide, and accidental shootings. We are asking Littleton town leaders to take urgent action to protect our community and the surrounding communities by enacting the strictest zoning gun laws possible, allowable in the order to stop the proliferation of dealers in our small town. And before I give this to you, I just want to tell you a little bit about today's events. So, in St. Louis, an adult and a teen were killed today in a school shooting. In Worcester, a school was locked down because of a shooting nearby campus. I myself spent the majority of my day today teaching 5- and 6-year-olds what a good hiding place is, how to stay quiet, how not to move. This shouldn't be. This isn't what we want in our community. I sat here listening to how much we're spending on the sewer in order to revitalize our common. This isn't the way to do it. This is not what we want in our common. This is not how we're going to bring businesses into our town. And I urge you to take action.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sanders, I saw your hand went up.
George Sanders, 672 Grave Road. Mr. Chairman, I was going to speak on the $200,000 gift that the Water Department was giving. I didn't happen to get here in time, so I don't know exactly what the disposition on that was. But I also would like to know, with the warrant, we have this tennis court and pickleball item on the warrant there. I had to understand that maybe that was going to be changed in location, and that they was going to put the tennis court add-on up at the high school there, and paint the tennis court there stripe for the pickleball. So I'm just wondering, what is the scoop on that article?
It's actually, that's the next item on our agenda after members' updates to discuss.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else have input? If not, we'll go to member updates. Mr. Rombacher?
So I have a couple things. On Wednesday, I zoomed into a mass climate forum that was at Fitchburg and hosted in Fitchburg. Lori Trahan and other people were there. I encourage people. It was recorded. You can go to fatv.org and watch it. It was very informative on things that are going on around sustainability and energy conservation and around. On Saturday, I attended the Green Advisory Council sponsored by Senator Eldridge, which was had representatives from several of the communities around here talking about what they're doing for sustainability and green energy going forward. There's a lot of, well, at least two communities in Jamie's district are part of the Net Zero initiative with Concord and Acton. So there's a lot going on there. We are, at Littleton is behind on what other communities are doing. Most of them have energy commissions and sustainability groups and sustainability managers. In fact, Jamie actually got an earmark for Sudbury, I believe, to hire a sustainability manager for this year in the budget. So it's just things that we should look at, and adopting stretch codes for energy usage and things like that. A couple weeks ago, I attended the wood walk in the Browns property, and I want to thank Littleton Conservation Trust for all the work they did. There's the trails are gorgeous. There's so many boardwalks back there, and there was the story walk going on. And thanks to the library and Littleton Conservation Trust for sponsoring that. Finally, I wanted to say congratulations to Lieutenant Gardner over the fire department on the birth of their daughter last week. So,
congratulations. Mr. DeCoste.
Well, you just reminded me, I'm not sure if it was brought up, but Tim Husky from Parks and Rec is a dad again, a new dad, and Keegan. So congratulations to Terry, certainly, and Tim as well. Also wanted to update the board and the public on the Economic Development Committee. We had a meeting last week, and starting to make some strides. We've established we've tightened up the mission statement, the vision statement, and identified goals. And at one point in time, we were hoping to get the EDC to come before this body and do kind of a presentation of where we're at and that kind of thing. So I think that's we're at a point now within the next month. After we get through town meeting, I think it'd be good to have EDC and certainly some other boards. I think we've talked about this over the past couple of years, to try to have boards come in and give us updates and find out what's going well, are there any needs, that kind of thing. So EDC is doing well. We are probably going to have to come back and look for a new member. There was one member that had to resign for personal reasons, so we're going to be looking for anybody. So if anybody's interested in joining the Economic Development Committee, we've got a lot going on right now. It's an exciting time for Littleton from an economic development standpoint, and we're working pretty closely with the state, as well as we're tapping into what one of our neighbors, or at least from the region, Hudson, has done a lot from an economic development standpoint. And we're reaching out to Hudson, and we're going to do either a field trip there, or they're going to come up here, and we're just going to do like a coffee and sit down and ask them questions and find out how they got to the point that they're at now, and how that might benefit Littleton to kind of use some of their best practices.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. I attended the LCTV steering committee meeting last week or week before. And one thing that was presented to me from Mr. Rory, actually, was the new, I called it Cactus, excuse me, Castus TV. If people watching this, anyone that's been in there, you go to that website and you can watch our videos. If you're not using YouTube, you can go through the LCTV in our town site. There's a better version of this, much more easy to use. I was thinking about individuals that have trouble navigating the internet, especially the new Castus version would cost us approximately $2,000 more a year and it's a point and click. The website was fantastic. I'd like to have LCTV come in and just present it to us probably over the next few months just to show its usability and accessibility. Just buttons that you just click it, government TV, click it, whatever. And then there's streaming banners on the bottom that can talk about stuff that's going on in town that people might not have known about, just kind of streams across. I think it's a great opportunity for
low cost.
Pretty low cost.
I've had problems using the existing site in Chrome, like it only
Yeah,
works in Firefox on my machine, so
Definitely
that'd be a
something.
nice update.
Yeah, something that we'll have them come in and present and let the public see it, because I think it's great. I do want to talk a little bit about the emails we've been receiving about the mill building, just in general. We do see these emails. We individually, I know we're all working on this. Obviously, we can't quorum this too often, but I know individually there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with the planning board as well, with individual board members if we meet in ones and twos on the side discussing things and moving forward. And a lot of your ideas are either in the works or you've created some new ideas. So I really appreciate a lot of the groups that have come together, and presented a lot of useful information that helps us move forward. So thank you. Lastly, another shout out to the fire department. My son attends an adult training program, ATI, and they ran into a snag. They couldn't do what they had planned to do one day. It's a day program for us adults with disabilities, and they ended up going to the fire station, and they put on a heck of a show for them. And all the adults are still talking about it. So thank you, fire department. That's about it. So thank you.
That's excellent, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just an Affordable Housing Trust update regarding the transfer of the Durkee Farmhouse to the Affordable Housing Trust. We are ready to move that forward. I'm just going to reach out to town council and ask them what the process would be, because I'm just not sure how we get that property transferred over to us. Bartlett Harvey and myself are trying to coordinate with Dave Guthrie, who still has ownership of the property, just to do a walkthrough of the house and kind of assess the existing conditions to help guide the Affordable Housing Trust moving forward. So that's it.
I'm just going to echo what Gary said about the zoning bylaw, and a lot of people have reached out to me, email and personal conversations about the mill building. There is a lot going on. There's been a lot of great feedback from residents, both in terms of just stating their opinion, but also in providing us with sample bylaws. So we appreciate all that input, and it's absolutely not going unnoticed, and we are taking it all into consideration, and I believe that we're moving forward with the proper amount of haste at this point to resolve that. Okay.
One other thing where we mentioned
Yeah.
the anniversary of the building.
Oh, that's
this
right.
building on November 5th, so come out to the party. I think it's 5:30.
Yep.
So
Saturday, November 5th, 5:30.
For the library.
It's lovely.
This building.
Yes.
Special town meeting conversations, discussion of Cooper Farm tennis pickleball park project. Mr. Wilson, do you want to?
Yeah.
Or do you want to tee this off, Anthony, or do you want Gary to start?
Well,
It's not tickleball.
yeah, right.
I asked for the reconsideration of the vote, so.
Right.
But that's kind of, you can
So-
speak a little bit to that.
So in light of some recent information with 36 King Street, which is the Indian Hill property for sale, Gary, as he said, asked to bring this back up, because that, if that's something the town wants to pursue, then certainly that could change really where we could do tennis courts and pickleball courts or something that would be really in close proximity to the high school, because with that, the high school would have had to, like they do right now with Chaddock Street, bring the JVs or over to here to do matches. Certainly, if everything was on campus, then we're saving on some bus costs too. So I think it's worth discussions whether or not that the board maybe wanted to consider holding this article, withdrawing this project right now, or something else.
Yeah, and just a little bit more, I don't even feel it's totally dependent on the King Street property.
Right.
I think this is a project that could happen regardless. I know, I want to thank Justin for running into me at the fire station at their open house. We just started a dialogue and started talking about another set of courts there and lining them with pickleball and what that would look like with Park and Rec. It's already a flat surface where the buses park, if you're familiar with the high school. There's potential there for another court, however we would have to shape it, with a lot less cost to the town, obviously, you can imagine. It just made a lot of sense. I was really behind getting something done immediately, because I know how much those are used up at at Shattuck, right here, up at Shattuck. So and I'm glad we did go forward with this article to make something happen. But I think this is a better opportunity for the town. If it's not something that we can make happen over the next season, we have things in play to potentially line the courts down at the high school currently with pickleball, and as well as the basketball courts up at Castle in the Trees as a temporary fix while we are going through this process. I'd love to hear if there's any information potentially that the school committee would want to discuss, if this is still something that we could work around. We did talk a little bit about scheduling and how the Park and Rec can really do the scheduling on those courts. The high school really uses those courts in the spring. That's when the tennis season is, for a few hours a day, typically Monday through Friday. There's a lot of availability there for scheduling outside of that. It lines up when, what I see at Shattuck with that population, it's typically a senior population or an adult population that's in there. Well, individuals are either at school or, so there's a lot of time. That time would typically be available regardless on those courts. So when we get into parking and where we'll do with the buses, that's a separate issue that we would definitely have to work through. And then the possibility of that King Street property where Indian Hill is has currently 87 parking spots there that link up beautifully with that, if this is something that the town, down the road we look at. But for now, I think I recommend that we remove supporting this article. And we can discuss CPC and how that plays into this as well. There is a little bit of work to be done, but I understand CPC funds can still be used for the construction of a new tennis court there on that property, just not to refurbish the tennis court that exists, which is really low money. Talking about resurfacing is nothing to the cost of creating a court. So,
Okay.
So that's where I am on it.
You were there? Were you there as well?
You can do a counterpoint. Or you can
I was there with the conversation with Gary as well, and I've also looked the financing packet that Alicia prepared for the finance committee and the CPC showed we were going to spend $1.3 million basically over at the Cooper Farm to put in those tennis courts, of which $1 million is infrastructure. So I think we can save a substantial amount of money by putting tennis courts over at the high school. versus that project and figure out a better use for our CPC funds than spending $1 million for parking lots and things like that. It will require work and agreements between the school committee and Park and Rec and us on the use of the courts, but I'm pretty confident we can work out those arrangements. So I agree we should pull the article in favor of doing something else. And we will have to work out a temporary solution of lining those courts for pickleball or figuring out how we can stage the reconstruction of those courts plus the addition of new courts and not have 0 tennis courts in town for some period of time. So there is a little logistic work to happen, but I'm confident we can work that out.
I think the funding to resurface that is much shorter money that we could probably do and then start construction as well. Resurface with pickleball lines and everything on the existing and then work if we have to. The timeline works, so there's definitely some opportunity there. So we'll look forward to working with the schools on that.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any comments?
No, I think everything's been touched upon. The booklets have been printed, so the article is, as far as the public is concerned right now, that's one of the articles in the warrant. But certainly, it makes sense to get the word out if we are going to withdraw it. That it's not something that people have to, if they were only going to come out for that article on at town meeting. If we get the word out now, they wouldn't have to attend. As far as the only thing I would add to the Cooper Farm argument is it leaves, if we don't do the tennis courts there, if we don't do a park and tennis and pickleball courts at the Cooper Farm property, which we have care, custody, and control of, it leaves that asset available for some other project down the road, which in all likelihood would be a candidate for some CPC fund use.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Ms. Napoli, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with everything that's
I
already
do
been
too.
said.
Okay. Anthony, do you have anything you want to add to this?
So you wouldn't withdraw the article, what we do with withdraw the project, because the article is a CPC article, there's 2 parts of it.
thank
One
you.
the one that CPC needs, but the second part is to raise and appropriate the $1.3 million, which is a select board project that we submitted to the CPC. So if we withdraw that project, and essentially that eliminates
kills the
section
article.
2
Yeah, okay.
of that article.
So do we need a motion to formally withdraw that project, or should we just say we did it? We're going to do it at town meeting.
We could work on making the adjustment in the one-page handout sheet.
Yeah.
If we have a motion this evening to withdraw the project from the CPC article, which is Article 9.
So I-
9 part 2. No, we didn't know what the conversation was going.
So a motion might be,
I got it.
okay.
Do we want to hear any public on this?
Well, the CPC's here, they can comment.
Yeah, I would, if there's any members of the
FinCom, CPC.
FinCom, CPC school committee that want to discuss or have any comments on that. If it's crazy, let me know.
Yeah, I can comment for FinCom. We did have this posted on our agenda.
Can you go there? Sorry, people at home can hear you.
Yeah, the mic's there at that.
Tyler Gray, Compline, Chair of the Finance Committee. We did have this posted for tomorrow night on our agenda to discuss based on, knowing it was on your agenda and public feedback we got. But, obviously, we may not discuss it if I know you do. But
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Brian Tarbuck, FinCom, 16 Fletcher Lane, FinCom, and the CPC rep. CPC discussed this last week or a couple days ago, and there was also thought of maybe we need to, pull this. So if you're doing the one, so certainly can't speak to what we might say tomorrow, but it seems pretty likely we would agree with you in terms of the change. The one question I just had is, this seems like such an obvious solution. I'm just curious why we didn't find it earlier. And maybe that doesn't matter. We found the right solution,
Yeah,
I recall talking about it, and there were issues with parking, and I don't remember all the details, but.
Doesn't matter. We got to a good
Anyway.
place.
Did we
Fine.
hire a consultant
I don't.
to find a good spot? for
We
the tennis
identified
courts?
the locations for them to look at.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
okay.
Anyway.
the school committee is a pretty scary group to approach, too. Just to let you know.
We got to a happy place.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Ready?
Oh, yes, okay, no, let's, everybody chime in.
I knew I could rattle your cage to get you up there.
Hi, good evening. Steve Marks, School Business Manager. On the school perspective side, we aren't interested in forecourts at the high school. It makes a lot more sense for the tennis program. I've also had conversations with Mr. Rombacher and Mr. Ansaldi regarding courts at the tennis court. I've also recently reached out, just for information more than anything else, reached out to Cape and Island Track, which is probably the premier tennis court manufacturer in New England, and an architectural firm who we've done business with, DRA. The new standard in tennis courts is called post-tensioning concrete tennis courts. They have about a 30-year lifespan compared to an asphalt tennis court, which has about a 10-year lifespan. The current tennis courts at the high school have severe cracks in them now. We've been holding off on repairing them and fixing them. We repaired them about 8 years ago to the tune of about $20,000. It would cost about $20,000 now to repair and resurface, repair and I think paint, not resurface the tennis courts now. So I just wanted to give that information to the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes.
Carolyn Mueller, 80 Struxbury Drive, and the current chair of CPC. So I don't think we would have a problem with withdrawing. There has been a lot of discussion. We do have a meeting posted for Thursday evening. Do we need to do that, or is this, does anyone want to join to discuss this, or is this kind of a dead subject at this point? And
So if the select board moves to withdraw the project, then there's no project for CPC. And if that was your only agenda item,
yeah, and that's what you're going to do.
perhaps you don't need a meeting.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, move the select board vote to withdraw the Cooper Farm tennis/pickleball project as proposed through Article 9 on the special town meeting warrant.
Section 2.
Section 2, Article 9, Section 2 on the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Gary. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much.
Carolyn, you don't need a meeting.
Just save us a half hour at town meeting.
Right, that's right. Okay, review of town meeting warrant and select board recommendations.
So do we have any?
Right. So this is just a recap of what your vote you took at one of your earlier meetings. I believe Mr. DeCoste was not at that meeting, so this is what you got to sign. Hopefully you like it. So this will change slightly based on your last vote on the second portion of Article 9, the CPC article, but otherwise I think the select board has supported the first portion of that. So with that said, we just wanted to share that with the board and affirm that these votes in this format are correct, and you know what is going to be expected of you next Tuesday.
Mr. DeCoste, do you have any complaints? You're lucky you didn't get 13 of them.
That's fine.
Okay. I think we're all good. Unless anyone else has any
We're all in it
comments.
together, baby.
Okay. Great. All right. Joint meeting with Finance Committee and School Committee. Good evening, everyone. I assume that you will all need to open your meetings this time.
Oh, we get the handouts.
I was pretending to be Joe Knox. All right. Alicia, are you going to present the forecast?
So school committee doesn't have a quorum, just let you know.
Right, so have you?
doesn't have a quorum.
Oh, okay. Okay, Finance Committee, have you opened your meeting?
Yeah.
You have a quorum, okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Alicia Nunley Benjamin, Finance Director. Good evening, Honorable Select Board, Finance Committee, school committee members and residents. We're going to go over the fiscal year financial forecast this evening. We're going to start with the current economic conditions. We'll start more on the macro side. More than half of U.S. CEOs say they are considering reducing their workforces within the next 6 months to prepare for a recession. 60% of business leaders said they plan to pause or reconsider their company projects. And around 90% of CEOs believe a recession is coming. Half of them are already planning for layoffs. And more than 33% of CEOs said the biggest global challenge facing their company year-end will be political and governmental instability. Now, on a micro level, on Littleton's current economic conditions, motor vehicle excise is down for fiscal year '22, or 2.22% below fiscal year '21. If you look at commitment 2, you can see we're down 564. In total, we're down 41,576.02. Building permits, 22 is highlighted in yellow, is also trending down. We are done 53 permits and 34 inspections, and our residential value is closer to that of 2020, which is 27,857,960, which is on par for 2020 versus 2021, which was at 34,604,960 in values. The reason for this is the projects are much smaller than we had in previous years. Now we have two charts for you on this. It's the consumer price index chart and the interest rates. So I'm going to start with the interest rates first. You can look from 1 year ago, we've gone from 3.25% prime rate to 6.25%. We went from 0.09 for the federal funds rate to 3.09. The LIBOR rate went from 0.08 to 3.14. 30-year fixed mortgage went from 3.01% to 6.7%. So our economic conditions, food prices have increased 2.1% over the 2 months ending in September. Over the year, food prices have increased 12.2%. Prices for food at home advanced 13.7%, and away from home 9.9% over the year. The energy index fell 7.3% for the 2 months ending in September. This was mainly due to the falling gasoline prices, about 19%, but this was offset by rising electricity costs of 7.1%, natural gas service increase of 4.7%. So energy prices have advanced 31% over the year. All items less food and energy, higher prices for shelter, 1.2%, education and communication, 1.6%, medical care, 6.8% rise, and rent increased by 5.4%. So in essence, we're definitely seeing signs of a recession. We have an inverted yield curve, which is a big sign today of a recession coming. CEOs are prepared on the private side, I think, looking at government instability, just our own selves with our biggest drivers for local receipts are motor vehicle excise and building permits. If those are trending downward, so it's a big signal for us that we got to be very, very cautious. One of the great things about Littleton are your financial policies. They've helped you weather many financial storms. Undesignated fund balance to be at 5% of total operating budget. Your capital project appropriate up to 2.5% of your operating budget. You always make sure to put money aside in your stabilization and your capital stabilization, which is very, very important. You need those rainy day funds, especially at times like this. Capital expenses must be more than $5,000. Minimum appropriation to your capital stabilization of 1%. And we use a very conservative revenue estimate because of those trends downward. So here's our projected revenue and expense forecast. Per Mass General Law, you have to have a budget that balances. So if you look at 23, it's in balance. If you look at projections for 24, we're off about $1 million. The same, 25, 26, 27. So what we're doing is we're looking more on the far side. If there is a recession and we're going downwards, we have to be cautious. So our revenue assumptions, 2%, 2.5% levy limit increase, a $500,000 conservative new growth annually, state aid growth of 1% annually, local receipts which are trending downward, and motor vehicle and building permits. Other revenues, a combination of transfers from other funds, bond premiums and ambulance revenues, and free cash use as a funding source for capital and stabilization funding. Here is our 5-year revenue projection. So in fiscal year '24, I'm projecting a change of 1.4% or $902,747. '25, 2.2% of $1.44 million. '26, 3.5. So as it's growing a little bit, I'm thinking we could start to recover, but for right now, I'm thinking we're definitely in the beginning of a recession.
Alicia, before we go any further, is there discussion in this presentation about potential ways to offset this trend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we gotta, we'll talk about, we have to refine, we have to meet with departments.
Yeah.
We have to go through wants versus needs. We've got to make sure that what we're spending really is what is needed, not just something that is wanted.
I was just thinking about the, this trend, and if we have to look at, we just came out of the worst pandemic in our lives, and how does that translate into, we've never touched our stabilization to recover from these type of things. If we got into a situation where we had to get into our stabilization, if we had something disastrous happen in town or we needed some money, I guess what I would like to see is some number that we wouldn't lose our credibility, our credit, our AAA rating, but if we had to get into some of these stabilizations under an emergency, what would that look like, and what would we have to do to maintain our AAA rating and our so that's.
I think your diligence and your financial policy is what maintains your AAA rating. The fact that you continue to build up those reserves for when you need them, I would not say dip into them unless you absolutely had to. We do use the capital stabilization every year for capital costs, so we really have to look closely, I would say, and have your honorable boards all look closely at requests to make sure that those are what's needed, because that is one funding source that you will be using is your capital stabilization, but I would not recommend at this time to touch your reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
Expense assumptions, so I am assuming a 4% increase to cover contract salaries and incorporating inflation. School operating budget and assessments, I'm estimating 5%. Other charges at 4%. Debt service at the current debt service schedule levels, not including upcoming issues. And employee benefits increase of 8% annually, with the biggest driver being health insurance. This is my 5-year expense forecast. Below, I know you see 3%, 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 4%, and the change in value of 1.9. That's with everything, including reserves. If we just looked at it from a total appropriations level, it'd be closer to 4.9, 5%, to 6%, to 5% per year on change alone. And you can see our revenues are not growing quite as fast as our expenses. So we really have to look extremely close and find out what's needed. Again, I can't state enough. When we're talking about filling positions, when we're talking about adding services, we absolutely want to give the best quality services to our residents, but we don't want to put ourselves in a bad position. So our analysis and next steps. So fiscal year project projection 3% greater than the previous year based on our current assumptions and inflation. We will further refine the projection when we review budget changes and priorities. We will work with departments to reduce operating costs. These projections are very preliminary and will be refined for the budget due at the end of December. We will work with all departments on their capital needs. We're estimating fiscal year '24 operating budget 57,812,192 with 2.5% to capital, or 1,445,305 that we can appropriate for capital. So in conclusion, cash, capital, and debt financing are between the 5 and 10% funding targets part of the financial policy. Capital assets should remain proportional with the operating budget changes, and balancing these two will be important in mitigating against deficit projections in our out years. The estimated senior center debt, the newly borrowed library debt, and current authorized sewer debt will take up most of the debt capacity until closer to fiscal year 30, when more outstanding debt falls off. Additionally, debt service will take up around 6% of the operating expense budget. Interest rates, project costs, and timelines may change, and the amount requested per year is too high to fund all projects that are requested. The Select Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee will need to review the department budget and capital projects in detail. You will receive the preliminary operating and capital budgets in December, and I thank you all and take any questions that you may have.
I have a question about the debt service. So the senior center, library, and assuming the sewer debt happens, can you tell me how that compares, like with historically, how much debt we've carried?
I would have to look at the schedule to actually give you the correct figure. I don't want to give you something off the top of my head, but I'm going to say we are doing more projects than we have before.
Yeah.
Very, very large projects. So we need to be very careful on how we're spending. And I think it was great on how you just analyzed your vote on how you want to use your money for the tennis courts. And
Thanks.
So the 6% number, typically I think a healthy, that's a pretty healthy number still, 6%. I know once you start pushing the 10%, I think we've had discussions where that starts to look really ugly for a town. So what do you think would happen? I don't know what 1% of debt looks like.
I'd say in the previous fiscal year, it was 8%.
Okay.
It's gone down to 6% because of the refinancing
Yes.
that was done previously to lower costs.
Yep.
So that did help tremendously.
Okay.
So my question is how the sewer project affects these assumptions. It seems like we're putting in this new sewer project and our growth estimates are low. Once the sewer's online, I wouldn't expect we're growing at $500,000 of new growth.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think we should I think for the next couple of years, the 500,000 or whatever is a reasonable number. But when the sewer comes online, I think we need to tighten up those projections a little more. Because, I think if Sal's commits to, building, once he puts in his money for the betterment fee, he's committed to building something, and I think our numbers are going to be much rosier than this. I don't know how much, but.
Growth numbers.
Yeah, our growth numbers. So I agree the next couple of years are likely tight, but I think the longer range forecasts probably need some tweaking with the sewer being brought online in the Northern Bank and all the other.
Every year
redevelopments.
it does change, right? But we can't count on something that hasn't happened right now and project for that. So certainly next year when you see that, if there's a project underway, we don't recognize that until the project's completed too.
Yes, I understand that, and I understand that, but we're saying we're having a 5-year forecast, and I think the first 2 years are probably fairly realistic, and then it gets really fuzzy, is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we talked about new growth a little earlier. We won't get into the details, but so I think there's opportunity there as well to help offset some of these.
Yeah. My other question is, things like the high school roof or things that are coming in outside of what our our typical capital budget is. Do we have a plan, or what are we planning for how we would finance or go forward with those types of projects?
I would defer that to the school committee. I know sometimes they're able to get funding from the MSBA, but I would defer to the school business manager.
Yeah, typically, an MS, for that to be, in talking with Steve, for that to be considered an MSBA project for the high school roof, it has to be older than 25 years. And our roof is 22? 21? It's gonna be 22?
About 22 years old.
Yeah.
And so the high school roof is about 22 years old, to be considered for an MSBA project under the accelerated project under MSBA. The roof can't be any newer than 25, it has to be older than 25 years old. The last time I looked at the statistics for projects they were accepting from last year, the average roof age was about 29 or 30 years old of projects that they had accepted into the MSBA program.
FinCom?
Yeah, I had two questions for each other, and others might as well. So, I just, on the debt service, is the library debt in there yet? I'm assuming it's senior center.
Yes.
Yes. Senior center, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, okay. And then, I guess, kind of a comment, but just, for the capital planning numbers, and I know if you looked at the 10-year plan for capital, right, there are some really large capital items and things. So I think, while there's a budgetary placeholder in the 5-year projection, it's far less than what we had in the capital plan. So if we're going through the budget process, I think that's something that I really have to look at, because the outlying years, fiscal 26 and forward, and not a year unless we come close to what we have in that 10-year plan.
I know we don't count on money that we don't have. I mean, one of the people putting those policies in. But do we have a vague sense of in what fiscal year the 550 King project might start rolling in?
I'm hoping we have some permits before the planning board soon, but
18 months?
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sewer project, it's so dependent, it's.
Yeah, right.
It's fully dependent, actually.
You certainly, to Mark's point, these are gonna change, right? When we start seeing projects, with 550 King Street, the Northern Bank project, and other areas in town, you'll see a completely different set of assumptions and revenue forecast estimates. But right now, this is what we have in front of us.
No, I think the conservative is absolutely the right approach. It's just, to not freak a little bit. The one thing in your 5-year expense forecast, I just note that the employee retirement benefits over 6 years, they go up pretty dramatically. Is that a standard increase, from 11.2 to 17.6 over 6 years? And that seems like an on-bounds kind of jump.
So, in the employee and retiree benefits is the insurance too. And we have added a bunch of positions as well. So you have to account for that. You don't always know how many you're going to hire, so you have to be on the conservative side. The trending of the health insurance going up about 8%, going to go up. So between the two of them, I just was extra conservative.
That's great. And if I could just make a snarky side comment, hey Steve, why didn't you ever tell us that over the years?
The other item I know that has at least been discussed is Shaker Lane, and I'm wondering if the school committee has any info on that project, on the status of that, when we might expect to have to borrow for it.
So that, if I may, that project is really just started. We're just doing the initial paperwork, and I don't even think that they've gone into the school as far as talking about enrollment numbers and all that stuff that helps determine what it is we need. And so we're probably looking at 4 to 5 years, Steve, by the time we're ready for.
Probably at least 3 to 4.
Yeah.
So right now, we're in what's called phase 1 of the eligibility period with MSBA. There's a bunch of paperwork we have to get in, some enrollment figures and some other stuff. That period closes it's the end of March, Kelly, I believe? March 23rd. March 23rd, and then we have to get invited by MSBA to a board meeting to get invited into the next phase, which is then the feasibility study phase. And then we would do a feasibility study and all that, and that's at least a one-year project. I think process, it might be a two-year process with MSBA. They go through the building with a fine-tooth comb, and they have everybody look at it, and they do plans and all that kind of stuff. So it's at least 2.5 to 3 years before I think anything would happen with that building.
Thank you.
Good question.
Just one second.
Just a quick follow-up. Just the monies that we appropriated at town meeting is going to carry us through that 2 to 3 years?
Through the
from phase
feasibility
one to
study.
phase-
Yeah. Hoping.
That should cover the feasibility study.
Mhm.
Right.
That's what, yeah.
And there's an owner's project manager component of that as well.
Okay. Just want to
I'm
clarify.
just curious when they're looking at the enrollment for the future, if they take into account the residences that will be going in at 550 King Street, which could affect particularly, I think, Shaker Lane.
They're aware of this potential project. Until, as Anthony pointed out, until we have something started, they're certainly not going to pencil it in. They're aware of it.
Anyone else?
This is always the worst time of year for us. We're always looking at, because we are very conservative, and I know you guys are, and so it's always gloom, and then come spring, we seem to, okay, this isn't as bad as we thought, but we weathered it right, the numbers, so I think.
There'll be more information coming in, Gary, to your point. You know, we'll get more information back on our insurance. We'll get a closer look at some new growth numbers, a closer looking at another 3 months worth of looking at our local receipts, right? That's the excise tax that she mentioned, and the building permits. You know, and as she said, when that value drops with those smaller building projects, because everybody really beefed up a lot over during COVID, but, you know, that contributes to what our new growth is those projects. So certainly more information. I would expect some closing of that gap before we even have to really dig into these budgets deeply.
Mr. Sanders, did you have something?
George Sanders, 672 Great Wood. Mr. Chairman, on the motor vehicle excise trend here that I'm looking at, is saying that it's below in FY21. My concern is that is Amazon included in this? Because I know Amazon was supposed to register about, I think it was the minimum of 250 vehicles to the town of Littleton for the purpose of the excise tax. So I'm wondering, is Amazon total number of vehicles that they were supposed to register here is being collected?
Mr. Ansaldi, do you know the answer?
Yeah, George, thanks. That's a great question, because really, although Amazon is coming up on a year themselves, this is the first time that they're actually going to get up to, or they hope to get up to full production. So we haven't seen that level of cars that vans, I should say, that they were talking about. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on too. But that's included in our projection right now. But again, we haven't seen anything yet, so we can't count on 200 additional cars. You know, what we're seeing right now is what everybody's seeing with, you know, the car lots are empty, people are holding on to their cars. All things that we as municipalities don't like. We like to buy new cars, we get more of that tax revenue from it. So that's the big contributing factor.
And if I may, hold on, George, I'll say through the chair.
Yeah.
So I also, to note that the Amazon fleet, they were hit by the same production issues that we were. And if you look at their fleet, I would bet half of them in Littleton are U-Haul. So they'll never be registered in Little, you know what I mean? That's not that it's a loophole, but they're not
right,
part of their fleet. So once we see that production as well, I think that'll help up the numbers.
Well, I know, I think, this is my opinion. I think the town should hold Amazon fleet to exactly what they agreed to do here, because for one, they had additional vehicles that was gonna be parked there, but they were not gonna be registered with the town of Lowell. So we was okay with that. And they had some private vehicles that was coming in there that was not gonna be registered with the town of Lowell. But whatever number of vehicles that they have, the town should know how many vehicles of Amazon is being taxed right now. Just saying don't know doesn't cut it. We need to know how many vehicles that we're collecting excise tax on.
So we do know, we get a report. I can't give you the number off the top of my head. Kathy has it in the office. We were just looking at it. So, but
They
yes,
report on-
it's still, to Gary's point too, that's part of that with, it's supply and demand.
It's less than we thought.
Well, just to follow up, I mean, we had this discussion before, like, we should have reports from like that and like the cannabis and the other HCA's and get that information back of all the agreements that we made, how they're actually working out. That's another example of one that we need to report back.
Through the chair, just to feed off again, because of the rising interest rates, because of COVID-19, the supply is not there as well. So to get new vehicles is extremely difficult, and we're on back order. So we're not going to see as much as we would if things were operating the way they used to be.
Thank you.
Before we let Alicia go, just quickly on, Mark brought up the cannabis. We haven't seen a solid number on what that revenue has done for the town. That hasn't been released yet, correct, from the state?
I've only received one, and it took quite a while. It's around 30,000. It's not a lot.
But that, excuse me, that is the 3% excise?
Correct.
Correct, because we only have one establishment.
30,000 for a year?
No.
No.
Okay, good. I was going to say, I
The
think they're
first
doing.
payment, I think that's a quarter. Or
Correct, that's a
maybe even
quarter.
greater than a quarter, at least a quarter.
It's a quarter.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much, Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you, FinCom. Do you want to adjourn? Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
you.
guys. Thanks for representing.
Ms. Napoli, Select Board discussions, Nagog Hill Orchard is next.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did have a Zoom meeting with Shannon Eggar, his attorney, myself, town council. Our assistant town administrator was on the call as well. And so we narrowed down some certain areas of the discussion. We're kind of looking at it from two perspectives. One with the orchard itself, the orchard property, and the other is more of like the ancillary operation, the business side of it, so to speak. What we really concluded through that conversation was that the proposed lessee he's very comfortable with the orchard management component. He's basically, saying, don't worry about the orchard. He's going to take care of the orchard. That's where he's going to get his product from and things like that. He's really looking more to pin this board down on are we open to a long-term lease during the RFP process? We stated that we were open to a lease up to 20 years. So he's really looking to get a commitment from us in that regard. The way we left the meeting was that he's going to work with town council and his attorney and really kind of narrow down, get us some more definitive information. We're going to bring that to the Nagog Hill Orchard Working Group. We're going to bring it to the Select Board. As far as pruning and things like that, the proposed lessee is planning on pruning the orchard. So that's not something that we need to worry about. And so that's really where we're at with that right now. About that conversation, and I want to just acknowledge our assistant town administrator, very helpful during that meeting and that process, bringing forward some really good solid questions to help move the conversation along, so.
So are we looking at an agreement on the orchard to get it moving now and not worrying about the business side?
We're kind of
and
looking at it in
separating them?
tandem, to be honest, but we are kind of looking at them separately and what that would look like. And so we're just trying to narrow things down, just so that we can go to the working group and come to this board with more information before we invite him in to meet with us. Because right now, it just wouldn't be productive. There's just too many unanswered questions that we're trying to just firm up before he comes before us.
Comments, questions?
I guess when we're talking business, we're talking with possibility for retail type.
So what he wants to propose, and one of the things that we discovered by having UMass come out and assess the condition of the orchard, was at Field 6, which is the field right next to the large barn, the large upper barn, is really not in good condition. UMass had suggested that all of those trees just be cut, because they're just not being productive. One of the things that the proposed lessee wants to do is a production facility on Field 6. And he explained the reasons why he would like that facility on site as opposed to leasing it. Currently, he's leasing it off-site from where he is now, just because it would help as far as storing the fruit, and then producing some of the products that he wants to produce. He wants to turn the barn, the main barn, into a tasting room, and really invest a lot of money into restructuring that barn, which I think would be great for the town. But on the flip side of that is, how much of a commitment are we going to give him so that he can begin to see a return on his investment? Does that make sense?
Does the APR even allow us to build new
It does.
structures?
So he actually brought out, and town council's going to look more into that. He actually brought somebody out from the state and walked the property with them, and they did determine that that would fall.
Agricultural
It would be,
use.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, so that's where we're at
That's
on
great.
that. So it's moving along.
Have there been discussions about irrigation and water access?
No, there hasn't, and actually, because he's identified certain fields that he is going to be focusing on, and that the irrigation piece of it, he would be responsible for.
Okay.
As far as the discussions go, and so we haven't really gotten into anything. The town would be responsible for this, he would be responsible for that. We're just looking for more definitive information from him before we even dive into those discussions.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's good information.
I'm all in favor of a 20-year lease, as long as we protect ourselves from it getting, abandoned, which I don't think, that doesn't sound like it's going to happen.
No, he's very committed to it. I mean, he's very committed to taking care of the orchard, which is something we were looking for. He's very committed to partnering with the town and being a good steward of not only the land, but of the community, from what he's saying to us, and I don't doubt that he would be. And he's very committed about being successful, and that's what we really want for that property, so.
Great. Some of that was apparent at Oktoberfest. I know you talked with him a lot more than I did, but
Right.
before I even said that I was on the select board, I was just kind of feeling him out. And he was very genuine in what he was trying to do and some of his plans, so.
Yeah, if he's successful, then the orchard's successful. So.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I can't imagine a better tenant, honestly.
Right, yeah.
No.
Yep. So that's where we're at. So
Good.
I think we're planning, Ryan, do you recall, is there a meeting coming up this week?
I think we want to follow up and continue the conversation. It's a great progress that we're making, and we want to continue to kind of push them to it. So I think we are going to be meeting sometime this week. We just haven't set a date to do so.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
I like the idea of two separate leases too, with separating the business from the orchard.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Is there
Really great news.
There was those trees that were blighted. Is there a plan to remove those, or?
I know. I mean, we could still cut them down
Was
if
there
we wanted
eight of
to.
them?
I don't know that we need to. I mean, we could. I was supposed to contact you, Chuck, to schedule that, but I know you're recovering from some surgery, so I didn't want to put that on you.
Shark bite?
May I ask a question? Is that allowed?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Craig Stoddard, Foster Street. So, 20-year lease sounds promising. You all seem in favor of it. I'm just curious, given the history that we've had with this property, why we would extend such a duration without having
lessons
There
learned.
would need to be
Lessons learned.
very specific goals of maintenance and upkeep that he would have to meet every year. And it would not be a blanket 20-year lease. It would be 21-year leases with the expectation that we would renew, I think, with safeguards on both sides to make sure that if he invests, he's going to stay there and he's going to see return his investment.
And we did have that conversation during our meeting, as far as the legal ease that could be crafted to kind of give us a safeguard. You know, if we're 5 years into this thing and we're like, wow, this isn't really working out for what we anticipated, how, you know, what is our safeguard? Because we do want to protect ourselves based on past history, so.
I think one of the initial conversations, I think you had mentioned like a 5-year with options or something like that.
Right, yeah,
So-
exactly. And we had a lengthy discussion about that during our meeting, just figuring out how that would be worded, like how that could work, so.
And it's gonna be dummy-proof, because 20 years from now, we don't plan on being on the
Yeah,
select board.
that's right.
So.
One more comment, I don't know where this gets inserted, but it's a beautiful property, it should be the pride of the town. I'd love it, and it sounds like he's a genuine guy who wants to do the right thing. Like, could there be plans, and this is maybe just an idea, where it's somehow, part of it is a cooperative, part of it is kids from our school can learn about alcohol production. Like, we're missing out on a whole opportunity of education. You know, community farm is great, but this is another opportunity where kids can learn something, and I just think, like, how do we make that part of the mission of this property, no matter who the lease owner is, that they should include the schools. I'd love to see an apple from that orchard in the cafeteria. Wouldn't that be great? Something locally grown. Anyway, it's just,
Right.
it's too cool of a property. I love that you're protecting it. Let's just keep going with that, because
Right, and there was in the RFP a stipulation that we wanted a local education component to the orchard for the reasons that you
And
mentioned.
continued orchard days, whatever week.
Right, and he did speak to
Okay.
that a little bit during our last discussion with him about how he could incorporate that into his business plan, because we definitely want to see that going forward.
Good ideas.
Great, thanks, everyone. Select board goals. Everyone, if you have looked through the document in the packet, I thought we would go over these just to remind ourselves of what we said we were going to do. Many of I don't want anyone to feel judged if you didn't do it, because I probably didn't do the most, but let's just talk about it and update on anything that is happening. The compensation grid.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, Steve's not here, but a lot of work. This is a major overhaul to the town's compensation grid to hopefully give us room to grow for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Looking forward with a lot of flexibility. I think there's a lot more to come. I really wish this had compensation grid and benefits type to include. We've got to get more creative if we're going to attract talent, especially against talents that we can't compete with salary-wise. So we've got to start looking at things, stipends, different bonuses, just things like that, or a really robust awards program for employees that quarterly, maybe we hold a board, we have a board that reviews people that get input for an award for that quarter for going above and beyond what their job is. Things like that, that a healthy, company would do. And this is, I think, that if we look at the town like that, I think we can start developing things that would really, and it wouldn't be a whole lot of cost to the town. It would be pretty minimal when you're talking about things like that, to include, a day off award, 2 days off award, things like that. People value time versus money. There's a lot of ways to attract people. So that's another piece to this. So yes, I don't want it to look like the compensation grid is the
Well,
end.
I mean, you can put in another goal. That's not a problem.
But it's a lot bigger than that. But I am glad that we were able to at least get something done before the November town meeting, because that was a lot of pieces had to be put into that. to make it happen.
Anything else on this first line that anyone wants to speak to? The one that I noticed was defining ways to improve communications plans and mechanisms with residents is something that actually I kind of stumbled into after the meetings on the mill building, because several residents came and talked to me about that.
So I've looked at what various towns have been doing for newsletters, and I'm trying to figure out how to get one started
Yeah.
more in town, how the update Anthony sends to us can be more turned into like a monthly newsletter or bi-weekly newsletter, sending out to all the residents and with input from all the other departments and things. Westford does a really good job on their newsletter, and I'm looking at what we can start doing and figuring out how much, what's actually involved. When I mentioned it to residents, several of them have stepped up and said, oh, I would love to help format and put that together. And there's people who want to start a local newspaper in town, so I think there's a lot of resources we can reach out to. I just haven't formalized anything on that yet.
And I'm curious what the cost of the broadcaster is for the, I mean, that's something if you had the Littleton broadcaster for not
Right.
just that, your programs. but
Right, and
in
I
general,
wasn't
what's
even
happening
talking
in
about something
Littleton.
we were mailing, just, or
An
just
email.
email.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a link on the website or something like that.
It's just time spent assembling it, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to offer, one of our board members, Susan Lander, she's very much interested in helping to develop a weekly newsletter or something. So, yeah, she's one of her pet peeves. And one of the things she would like to help with, so.
Who was that?
What's that?
Who was that woman?
On the second line, I
I'm
know
sorry,
Cin-
I didn't introduce myself.
the-
We know.
We know.
Marge
Marge
Payne,
Payne.
Chrisville Road.
Town policies and bylaws, obviously, we're about to have that as our next agenda item, so that's moving along.
Yep.
Fiscal planning, anything in there we want to talk about?
I've done nothing in that regard.
Yeah. Just,
So-
you know.
Gary and I are now members of the, I don't even know, the senior tax relief
The TRED.
committee, or, yeah, in support of TRED. We haven't met yet, but we will, because Mr. Barbella is absolutely holding us accountable.
Good.
So, yeah, that is something that is
In
very much
progress.
on, yeah. So we have done some pre-work before that committee was even set up, with some proposals and had conversations with Jim Arciero. So there's some foundation there, and that certainly, I'll throw myself under the bus a little bit. I need to do a lot more work on that, and I think with us having that committee, it's going to be a little bit easier to share the burden and the work, not the burden, because I think the outcome could be fantastic.
Town facilities, I think we actually kind of started this with the RFI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to go back to, on fiscal planning, on Mark's comment about 550 King Street, financial model, tax revenues, impact on services. I think impact on services, a discussion that we really need to start having.
We'll come back to that. It's on the agenda later.
Oh, it is, all right, perfect, never mind.
Perfect.
Never mind.
Agriculture, Nagog Hill Orchard is moving forward, that's lovely. Anything else anyone wants to speak to there? Economic development, EDC is working.
Yeah, like I said, we're getting the legs under us. It's good.
Common revitalization, look at that, Mark.
Yes.
It's like you're hitting all the, you knew this was coming up, or?
No.
Okay. Yeah, 550 King Street, we've been doing, okay, housing, Habitat Humanity inches forward. Anything else on that one?
Well, Cindy mentioned the home at Durkee, so there might be
Yeah.
some opportunity there.
Yeah, and I just want to mention to the board, maybe while we're talking about housing, we have a big issue with affordable housing in town. I'm so, I'm going to say disenchanted at this point. I mean, this is something I've been passionate about since I've gotten was elected to the board. I just feel like we're falling short, epic failure with bringing affordable housing to our town. I'm really worried about it.
Even though we have above the 10%
It
required
doesn't-
by the state, it
so-
doesn't feel that way?
No, because, and we've had that discussion a lot, that even though we're above that 10%, that's just a number imposed by the state. It doesn't mean anything,
You're talking
to be honest with you.
Low AMI type.
Yeah, honestly, that's just a number that they put out there as a threshold that we're supposed to abide by. It doesn't mean that we're being successful as a community whatsoever. We're really losing done so many reports and studies on this. I did a PowerPoint on this when I first got on the board. We're not following whatsoever the information that we've been given from outside consultants, the information that we know through our housing production plan, the information that we know from Elder and Human Services. And the senior component of it is one thing. You know, we've had so many projects that have been brought forward by the planning board. You know, when those bylaws came forward, they said, you know, we're just going to put it 10% affordability, but that doesn't mean that we can't ask for more. They've never asked for more. And if you look at other communities, they'll mandate it's 20% affordability or even higher. We've never deviated from that 10% affordability, and it has not benefited any of the seniors that we have currently in Littleton. You know, and maybe we're working in some regards with what we're going to discuss later this evening about reutilizing town hall for affordable housing, but that's only going to meet a small demand of seniors in our town. And the other thing too is, and we've identified this in previous reports, is we're seeing, even since I first did my first report on this 5 years ago, a decline in residents ages 20 through 34. That is a significant population for our community, and we're losing them. They don't live here. And that's our workforce, you know, and that's concerning to me. And there's a lot of people that want to live in Littleton that can't afford to live here, and we're not meeting that demand. And it's really disheartening to me, I have to be honest with you. And I really honestly don't think that it's helpful that we have 3 members of the planning board on the Affordable Housing Trust Board, just saying. Because we have that board, the Affordable Housing Trust Board, would be a great tool to push back on the planning board, but we already have 3 members of the planning board sitting on that board, on the Affordable Housing Trust, so how much of a pushback? It's kind of created an echo chamber. So I just wanted to share that while we're talking about housing.
Yeah.
So on the housing, I think I differentiate between affordable housing with a big A and a little a myself, right? And the big A's are those that meet the AMI requirements, and the little A's are those 20 to 34s where we're not building starter homes or things that are, you know, not the McMansions and things, right? And I think the town does a better job on the big A affordable than the little a affordable myself, because we are at the 10%, and yes, we should be doing a lot better, but the little a, we're doing nothing, right? We're hoping like the stationary development or 550 King Street or something solves some of those problems, but we're not pushing that one because it's not mandated by the state or anything. It just kind of falls by the wayside, and we really do need to do more for those, you know, people just out of college and having, or, you know, our workforce housing, right? Which doesn't necessarily fall on the AMI spectrum, those types of folks. So I agree with you 100% on that. But I try and differentiate, it's 2 different buckets in my mind, so.
Yeah, I hope that 550 King Street adds enough inventory of smaller apartments that they will essentially turn into 20 to 34-year-old workforce housing, just because they're going to be so much smaller than the large mansions, that they're going to be more affordable.
Did you see the price point on their proposal that we're going to discuss later tonight? Yeah. It's.
Excuse me.
Yep. So, it's another conversation.
Just I mean, I agree with all of you and everything that was said. The only point of not even point of clarification, the only devil's advocate piece that I'll throw out there is with the, with other communities throwing the 20%, been demanding developers give 20%. I know that we've gone down that road, and with our planning board has eased off of it, and it plays into that state number, right? The 10% affordability, and we're up in, well, yeah, the 12 range, yeah. A lot of those communities are playing catch up. They're trying. The reason they're demanding that developers give 15 to 20% affordability is so that they can get back up, so they can they can avoid having a 40B project going into their community. So, just not even devil's advocate, just a
Well,
another point of information.
That's one of the reasons I was saying the big A versus the little a, right? Because we mandate the big A affordable, but there's nothing in the little one. So it becomes a community of the Big A affordable and the McMansions, and there's nothing in the middle that's
Right.
being built
Nothing in the
in.
middle, right.
I think we need to find a way to, it's a struggle with having local preference, and the state doesn't make it easy on us or on developers. You know, they take our teeth away in many ways, so it's difficult for us to mandate. local.
Again, that's why little A affordable is better, because there's no lottery. You know, we just can find some way to build smaller houses or apartments that are more attractive to people who.
Well, they turn into looking like hotels. I mean, there's no $1,000 a month housing coming to
There's
Wilton.
no two families, I mean.
It's just not gonna happen, it's gone, you know, or apartments.
People aren't building them.
I don't know, besides building up, where the developer can make their money that way, there's no other way.
There is no other way.
Yeah.
And it's terrible, but that's the truth, and I don't know if, you know, the population or Littleton is,
Well, it's what the
wants to
market
have
will
a
bear.
bunch of
Yeah,
apartment
you're right.
complexes. You know, we saw what that did, at the end of the day, what it does to, why did Acton take off from Littleton and Western? We were all kind of similar size. They're over twice our population now. Like,
Well,
and it's because of all of that, just, they popped up all over the place, and there's a lot that
Garden
comes to-
styles.
I think it's a funny comment, just given what we're looking at for 550 King Street.
Yeah,
We're
it-
looking at probably 1,000,
Yep.
you know, units there. It would be nice if we could get more small A affordable housing out of that, but I don't think it's going to happen.
At
So
550?
Yeah.
I think our high number is what, 760?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking too, if he buys the mill,
Oh, I got you.
that's
Another
going to be
120 or
another.
something, but.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all what we're talking about for, can we get more affordable than that? I mean, for a developer, like I said, for a developer to buy that piece of property, to
Right,
make money off of it.
right.
I don't know how they, without building it straight up, I don't know
Yeah.
how you, and we don't want to see.
I think even building straight up doesn't matter. I guess what bothers me is that, you know, like the Affordable Housing Trust Board, we put together concept goals. We had this grand plan that, you know, when a developer comes in, we're going to say, here are our concept goals, which we have given to developers, and it's just, it's not going to happen. Like, I'm just disenchanted by it, I guess is just my point. For one reason or another, economics has a lot to do with it, but I just wish there was something more that we could do, but I just don't know. I don't think the senior sell-off's going to happen. It's just all these things that we've envisioned and talked about for the past 5 years, and I just feel like we're falling short, and I don't know how to fix it. But I'm just putting it out there, just for conversation's sake.
I think it's like eating an elephant, right? One bite at a time. I think we need to keep just trying to take a step forward, take a step forward, take a step
Right.
forward, and eventually we'll create a critical mass and start having some wins, like Turkey Farm. I mean, if that's, you know, potentially Robinson Road, if that gets redeveloped in some way. I mean, I think there's little bites that we can make that
Right.
can
I
be
hope
driven
so.
by the need for some affordability.
Right.
They're really asking for a local development that has it in their heart to do it, or a nonprofit.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where we're at.
That's what
because
we're asking
You're
for.
not gonna get it from a developer
Nope.
that just, it's
Right.
empty money.
Working with state agencies and trying to find out
Right.
if there are some resources available to us to help us to,
That sounds like a goal.
I think it kind of already is, isn't it?
Can I comment?
Sure.
Hey, maybe we can research other communities, both in the United States and abroad, that have done this with net zero construction and different innovative ways to build that would attract a younger audience, but make it more affordable. Like, I think we're not the only town dealing with this. Massachusetts is expensive and we can't discount that. But there are towns and communities doing innovative things with the way that they're building and developers that are doing it. Like, maybe we just need to think outside the box, if we haven't already, to find, you know, thoughtful developers and architects that are doing new things.
Right.
I do think it's a lot about the developer. Like,
Sure.
whether it's someone who's willing to build little, small, tiny, you know, row houses or duplexes, or someone who wants to build net zero, you know, we're not seeing that kind of person come and
Right.
pitch developments to the planning board.
So one of the things that we talked about when we talked about the RFI for Shattuck Street, which we're going to talk about later, was issuing a town-wide RFI for affordable housing,
Yeah.
which is something that we could certainly do. and just see what people come forward to, your point, and see what other ideas might be out there, what other agencies
What
might
might
be out
stick.
there. Think outside the box, and see who comes forward. You never know what we're gonna get. So that might be something we want to talk about.
I think you could attract 20-somethings to move here if you built something that they did, not just another cookie cutter apartment. You know, like I think your younger generation is a little more thoughtful about where they're living and the kind of building they're living in. So it's just worth exploring.
Sorry for putting us down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, Mr. Sanders.
It's good stuff.
I just had a question. You know, talking about attracting this, one of the key things is land. And, you know, we only got so much land. Do we have any land that, you know, that we could think about, you know, to develop where we could put this affordable housing? You know, if you have land, that's like the key. And maybe you can get someone, entice someone to come in, but if they got to spend the money for the land, then, you know, they probably don't want to lay that out. But there's a possibility if the town, I know the town got many acres of land, I don't know how much of it is that you could use, that you could put a housing area in like that, but I think we need to look there first.
I know that the conservation, Amy, the conservation agent, was doing an inventory of everything in GIS that was owned by the town, and just making sure that it was all entered properly and accurately so that she could look at potential plots and locations to see if just that kind of thing existed.
So that was actually an exercise that was being done with Kathy Miller.
Yeah.
All the department heads that touched it, Park and Rec, I mean, because there's different people that have care, custody, and control of different parcels
Yeah.
around town. And it was a good exercise to identify all the, I mean, we've taken some land through tax title, and, you know, if a bunch of these pieces could be put together, and maybe we could put up, you know, even a few townhouses, if we can do it, like you said. I think Mr. Stohovic made the reference, or Mr. Sanders, if we can strike a deal and say, listen, we'll allow you to build on this land. You build on it, and there's some affordability built in, and there's ways to do that, and there's CHAPA and other organizations in the state that can guide us through that process, but we need to get an idea of how much of that land we do have available, and how much of it is buildable, how much of it would perk, and, you know, so there's a lot of moving parts to that, and there's some expense to that as well, and, you know, there's also bandwidth.
And additionally, I would say the Littleton Conservation Trust, as far as private lands that are now like not developed, that are coming into something that could be developed, they are instrumental in knowing where that's coming and working with the landowners to find a way to make it as palatable as possible. So if they want to donate some and, you know, give some to the town for a smaller development, that's the sort of thing that they're very good at. And I think they're probably the main source of that information in town, just from years of relationships.
I will say, when we toured the Lopoli properties, you know, I asked that direct question, this massive structure.
Building?
Yeah, all right, I asked how many school-aged children, how many have children? They knew exactly.
20.
Yeah, it was 21 children out of...
What, 800 apartments?
Yeah, it just blew my mind. So it's really, it was the young professionals that were in there, just my visual, I could see that.
Yeah.
You know, using the gymnasium and the...
Right across the street from the MBTA. And
Yeah,
yeah.
But that isn't, I still think that that's probably not addressing some of the population.
I mean, I think like the project in Haverhill it was much more affordable in some respects for a young professional.
Yep.
You know, if you're
Yeah,
looking
that's
at a
true.
one-bedroom apartment and it's $3,200 a
Yeah.
month, it's like, I know some young professionals can afford that, but if you look at somebody that's just out of high school, let's just say
Or a
some.
barber or a...
Well, someone in town, just say they went to the tech and they graduated the tech and now they're an electrician or a plumber or something. They're not making that kind of money to be able to afford that rent. And I think that's where we're missing.
Yeah.
You know, people that work at, we did a whole presentation, I did a whole presentation on this. You know, people that work at Donlands, people that work
Service.
yeah, exactly. That whole group, that whole age group they can't afford to live here. All those people that provide services that we rely on are firefighters, are police officers.
Teachers.
Yeah, our teachers, exactly. I think we're just really, there's definitely a void there. And I don't know how to fix it. I think maybe issuing a town-wide RFI, just like we did for Shattuck Street for Town Hall, and just seeing what can come forward. I know that town staff are currently still working on that inventory of town-owned property, to Mr. Sanders' point. I just don't know when they're going to have, it's dependent on bandwidth, when that's going to come back to us, so anyways.
It's a great conversation.
No, I'd like to, no, it is a good conversation, but I'd like to move on, and we have other items on the agenda here. The last items are boards and committees and other. Cindy has everything in other just about, which is all stuff that you're working on, which is way to go. World War I restoration.
Which looks awesome, by the way.
Veterans Corner.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Mark has the senior center, which he's been working on. And then we talked briefly about inviting in boards and committees that we haven't seen in a while, which we can come back to. Let's move on to bylaws. Selectmen's regulations and so forth. Who's going to take this one?
Is that me?
I guess
That's me and Mark, actually. Just for full disclosure, Mark and I have been working on this together. So we can start on, which one's up first in the packet? Amusement devices, perfect. So we both reviewed these together and just kind of, shared comments back and forth. So on amusement devices, if you look down to section 2.2, the applicant must be the owner of the premises. In this day and age, I find it very likely that the applicant leases the premises and doesn't actually own them. Own the premises, so I was thinking that was language that the board might want to consider changing.
Anyone
Mark,
have any
feel
idea
free
what
to
an
chime in
amusement
anytime.
device is?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
No, it's not.
Pinball machines?
It's a video game.
So like an
A video
arcade
game.
cabinet?
It's an arcade
Centipede.
game, or the golf simulators count.
Bowling.
Like skee ball and stuff like that would count, I assume?
I assume, yes, but it's not not gambling devices.
Weird.
It took a long time for me to even figure out what an amusement device was, so.
So, thank you. So, yeah, do we want to change the term amusement device? Do we need to do that?
I think that's probably a state.
It is a state term.
Okay.
It's from the days of the arcade, though, is it not?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but to the point, like the golf simulators, we had an applicant come forward and they're going to have golf simulators in their business.
We should call it that. Simulation.
No, I know, yeah, but if it's a state term, then I guess we leave amusement devices.
Here's my question, like, we're not doing this for vending machines for Cokes.
Right.
No.
Why are we doing this for video game console, like video game arcade cabinets?
It's
It's
actually a state statute that we can charge them $20 for a
I mean, is it
licensing
even
fee.
worth it? Like, the $20 application fee, they got to fill
Well,
out
we
a
heard
form.
the
they
local
got-
receipts were down.
And then they have to come before us, like, is it even something that we need to have?
I would argue that
It was created in 1982.
I would argue that it needs to be just removed.
It's Atari.
So I think we can remove it and still just have the town clerk issue a license and collect the $20 if we really want.
Just have an amusement device fee?
I believe we can just do this as a normal license through that mechanism if we want. I'll double check that, but,
Is that something we want to consider?
I would say, let's get rid of it if it's not super effective or necessary. There's no reason to have it. It's just
It's an outdated.
cruft and,
Right, and review of application by the chief of police.
yeah.
I mean,
Is this when the circus came to town?
I don't know. I really don't. And then the legal notice requirement was something that Mark had brought up. Because that costs money.
Plus,
to pu-
like
publish
enforcing
legal
that,
notice.
that kids in school can't play these games.
Yeah, we're never, I mean,
Like, no one's ever gonna enforce that.
No.
Why do we have bylaws that are unenforceable?
right. Well, it was the 80s.
We've
Mark.
got a lot of them.
I don't think
I
it's
mean,
made for
Matthew.
those, though. I think it's made for the golf machines at clubs, and I think
This
it's
wasn't.
made.
There's no way.
Amusement licenses, it's not for video games.
Okay,
Yeah, so we adopted it in 82.
well,
So what do you want to do? Do you want to have Mark move forward and see if we can just have the town clerk issue a permit, or do you want to just scratch it all together?
Like, my preference would be, what's the minimum we can put in here? Just say, it requires a license and it's $20. If there's one paragraph we can put in that's that and we're done,
Go see the
then
top
I would
one.
argue that's what I would prefer.
What do you think, Chuck?
Yeah, I'd get less is more. Just that if someone's gonna use an amusement device, there will be, they need to file it with the town clerk, and there's a $20 fee, or whatever that is, and be done with it. It's just, I mean, if Pizza
there's just
Express
no-
wants to put an old vintage Pac-Man game
Are we
in
going to
there,
give them a permit for their amusement device? I mean,
I don't think we need this anymore.
it's not gonna be policed.
I mean, we're never going to enforce it.
Right,
How
so
are we
then-
going to enforce it?
So if you actually look under the business, on the town clerk website, it will tell you who has these licenses and how much they are.
Really?
Yeah.
How many are there?
There weren't that many.
Yeah.
It's probably like around 20, probably.
Really?
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
at the campsite.
Well, 18 of them in my basement, probably.
And chip
Well,
shop.
well,
License
Chip Shops probably
basement,
has 7 of them.
Oh,
something
yeah,
like
that's right. I
that,
forgot
and-
about chip shots. Okay, so what do you want to do?
Get rid of it.
Keep the $20.
I don't know that we can change the fee. It's in state statute what the
Okay.
$20 is.
Can we just rely on the state then and just remove this from our local code completely?
Probably.
Would you like to
I looked
send-
around in most towns, I
So we'll
couldn't
make a
find
list,
this as a
Anthony, to
policy.
ask town council.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, we should throw it by town council.
All right,
just
so
get
we'll
an
ask
opinion.
town council if we can
Subject
just,
to removal.
if we can abolish this. So we'll get approval from him or input from him. All right, so that's that one. Amusement devices. What's next on the list?
Parking?
All right, parking. So, and I believe that the chief of police might be reviewing this one as well. So I just found this was interesting, and Mark, feel free to chime in anytime. It says, with regard to parking, it talks about us enforcing parking on any street or highway. Do we have jurisdiction over, like, Route 2A?
Yeah, we
That
do.
comes through Littleton?
It's ultimately the state police, but we
can,
it's like a reciprocal agreement where we can pull people over for speeding within our town limits and
okay.
things like that.
And I assume if someone stopped in the middle of the road, you could,
Right.
call
And
a tow truck.
we respond to 495.
Yes.
It's interstate.
Okay.
so.
This is like parking
I
on
was
the
just,
sidewalk.
I was just curious about
Yeah,
that.
the car's parked on the sidewalk.
Yeah, right.
That should be enforceable.
And then we have this whole big paragraph about where parking is allowed. And that was or parking's prohibited, I'm sorry. Do we want to just say parking's prohibited unless otherwise posted? Like, do we want to keep adding streets where it's not prohibited?
Well, so is this list just Foster Street and King Street? Are those the only two that are called out as it's prohibited?
It's
Right.
because we were reactionary. I remember when the train station on Foster, they had to start saying people weren't using
I
the
see.
MBTA, they were just parking all on Foster, and then Bulkley. It was like, all right, has to be an enforcement.
Okay, that actually does make sense.
So, but do we want to keep listing, do we want the specific streets listed in there? Or do we want to just say unless otherwise?
I don't want the highway department to have to go out and put up all kinds of signs where either allowing or restricting.
Yeah, not
That's
allowing,
a
but
cost to
restricting,
us.
like it's restricted on Foster Street, we already have the signage there. And then, what was the other one? Foster Street to Bulkley, and then King Street from Foster Street to Rogers Street?
From a point 34 feet
I'm
west
like,
of Route
ser-
119. 34 feet. Who stepped that off?
I don't know. I mean, it's, right,
Distance of 310 feet.
so it's up to you guys.
I guess the question is, what is it, that's why the chief needs to look at it. What's currently in their policy that states if a car is parked on 119 hanging out onto the street, what's the enforcement policy? I think it-
There's, when you go for your driver's license, your permit or your driver's license, there's rules. I mean, you've got, it's what, 12 inches or 18 inches from the
Yeah,
curb or
right.
whatever it is. And so they don't need us to tell them
Right.
what's legal and illegal. There's state statute that,
Right, yeah, exactly. That's why I think that this is one of the ones that the chief might be.
Because what you don't want to
reviewing
get
as well.
into is someone having a barbecue or a graduation on, pick a street, and they've got 15 guests and 15 cars parked on the street, and you're going to take
Along
them
the
all
side of the road.
because
Yeah,
they
but
I just,
That's different from someone parking on Foster Street to get to the train station, where there's no
Absolutely.
marked parking, and
but that's monitored by the police. They know when they drive by that this is obviously their parking. So I don't know what the enforcement in this has to be.
So, if I may?
Yeah,
Mr.
go-
Chair.
sorry.
So perhaps we look for comment from not only the chief of police, but also the DPW director, get their opinions, and maybe send this off to town council for a little cleanup or recommendations on that, because everything was in here for a reason. What that reason was, we don't know, we weren't around. But certainly, you know, I think it's worth hearing from DPW as far as, you know, snow removal is a big issue, and how does that impact it, and so forth, so.
Okay. That's, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then just the other thing was the emergency parking ban. I just didn't know if those hours had changed, based upon what's written in the bylaw. This was amended in 1990. If we want to make this
We should ask
language
Steve.
broad
Yeah, that's-
and flexible, as opposed to the way it's worded currently, I think might be wise.
Yeah, it's a weird time, right? 1 AM to 6 AM.
Yeah, and I think, right.
I would probably advocate for getting rid of the individual call-outs and putting up, if we have to put up no parking signs, we can put up no parking signs. I mean, listing the 34 feet from 119, it's just silly. I mean, why are we don't want to get into like calling out every single place where people can or can't park.
Right.
But-
If it's prohibited, you can't park there, and if it really becomes a problem, like around the train station, we could put up a no parking sign.
Right,
Paint-
so we'll
paint the
get
roadway or
the,
something.
yeah, we'll get the chief of police and the
Okay.
DPW to chime in on that. But as far as the all-night parking prohibited, we just want more,
That might be state too. 1 AM to 6 PM is, or like every town has the same bylaw, because I think no matter where you
Doesn't
go in the
it?
Commonwealth, it's
A lot
1
of
to
it's
6.
in there, and that's, I think a lot of that is for overnight parking restrictions. Even in Brookline have the same thing,
Right.
1 o'clock to 6 AM. And a lot
Just
of
breaks
that-
it up. You can't park it for 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
What about car chargers? Can I charge my car between 1 AM and 6 AM in the
No.
time?
No.
You can try.
I'm
I'm calling.
Yeah, it just makes it more complicated.
That's gonna, yeah, there's a whole bunch of bylaws gonna have to be created.
so this is, unless other, so this is basically, I thought this was like the inclement weather parking, overnight parking ban. The way this is worded, is this it
Every night.
every night?
Yeah.
Between November 15th and
And April 1st, is it? Or April
And
15th?
And that's picked
Oh.
for snow fighting, right?
Yeah, no,
Because
I
that's
get that.
when we do a lot of our work, is when everybody's sleeping, so.
Well, what if we have a blizzard
But even the
and you
the
want
dates
people
don't
off
matter.
the street at like 5 PM?
If you get a
Well,
November.
some people do that, and they call for, you know, my town will say
Emergency,
emergency,
ban,
yeah, and cars will have to be off the street by 6 AM, but
So we should just add language like unless
We've
otherwise.
had November 1st blizzards.
Yeah, okay. So I'll have the chief and DPW take a look at that one.
So Cindy, the other thing on, earlier, under general prohibitions, you shouldn't be able to park in a bike lane either, right? It doesn't list bike lanes.
Right, because we didn't have them back, right?
Right.
Ah, so add bike lane, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big thing.
Okay, that's a
Every road
good,
we make now is gonna be having bike lanes.
good addition. So which one is up next?
The signage on the streets, I
Okay.
believe.
Yep, so the comments that we had on this was, do we want to change the word illegal to unauthorized? Do we want to change the word devices to objects? And should we assume that the state has its own laws regarding signage on highways, which the town does not have jurisdiction over? And then the other comment was, what defines someone indirectly employed by the town? I don't know what that means. And should the term office be clarified? And does the town actually issue permits for use of sidewalks, streets, or highways?
I
So-
guess, you know, like what we gave the permit for the Indian market
Common.
on Saturday
Meeting
a
House?
Okay.
week ago.
Meeting
That
House?
was sort of a, Meeting House Road, thank you. That was sort of a permit for a street.
Right, that's true. So in paragraph 6, just look at Article 6, Section 3.19. If you go down, it says, after 5 days' notice, illegal advertising signs or devices may be removed. Do we want to change that word to unauthorized insteed of illegal?
Yeah,
I mean,
unauthorized is good.
I mean, you're talking like a yard sale sign. you could actually get a fine of $5.
Right, yeah,
But
I
we-
just, right. And then no person shall place or erect a cause to be placed or erected within any sidewalk, street, or highway, any fixture or structure. So that one's okay, we want to keep that, right?
Yep.
And then I didn't understand how somebody can be indirectly employed by the town.
So like a plow operator?
Contractor.
So it would be a
I
contract.
think it's a contract.
Oh, yeah, like,
Contractor.
yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to put IE seasonal contractor.
Be my guess.
Okay, thank you. And then street or highway, we
You
already
want to change
talked
Board of
about
Selectmen on
that.
there, right?
Would you say?
Board of Selectmen,
For the officer?
3-2,
Yeah,
Select board.
3-20 rather, yeah, you just change that. But we can do a
We'll
find
just do
all,
a find
right?
all select board,
Yeah.
put everything.
okay. All right, so that one's all set. And then regulations for use of Shattuck Street building. It talks about a form, but there was no form associated with the policy. And Mark, actually, I don't know if you want to speak more to this, but you brought up the point that can we just come up with a general policy for all town buildings?
Yeah, the schools have their own policy for housing things. We don't talk about the fires, what happens with the fires, or the police station, just the town hall for the use of the building. So it seems like we.
Or the library.
Or well, the library has their own policies too.
Right, they all do. The police, it all goes through the admin.
Yeah, so.
Fire goes through the admin.
So it's $100 per event or up to 4 hours duration, $200 over 4 hours duration, a kitchen, $100 per, I don't even know you could rent all that stuff in Shattuck.
And who approves use? Like, what is the policy as far as applying to
Doesn't
use
say where.
any of these spaces?
It says forms must be returned to the office of the selectmen, so I would assume that we theoretically approve the use of these rooms.
Right.
I have, Anthony, have you ever
you give them-
collected money for any of this stuff?
And you give them the keys to the building with, you, they give you their driver's license, you give them the keys to the building itself. And they're responsible for securing it.
We don't hand out keys anymore. We
it-
fob and we have it all electronic, so we would leave the door unlocked.
It sounds like this whole thing needs to be either scrapped or rewritten.
Oh, my goodness.
I
Yeah,
mean-
we've had requests and they've been minor requests, the Boy Scouts use it and.
We don't charge.
We don't charge.
Well, some people have rented it for like birthday parties and things like that, just on the room of their house, and I know I've gone to a couple. And they've been
In the
rented.
multipurpose room?
Yeah.
So what is the board's?
I believe it all went through Keith, to be honest. I think whether or not he collected money, I don't know.
I think it should be, I like Mark's
I think
idea.
he bought a new Prius with it.
All municipal buildings, not just Shattuck.
Yeah.
Oh. So do we want to, Mark, do you want to look at like other, what the schools are doing and try
Yeah, I
to
can
make
They
a
use
more
School Dude.
uniform policy?
They use an app.
So the library has, the library's policy is based on, like, they only allow not-for-profit things in the library rooms, and so they don't charge, right? But in exchange, you can't charge.
So you couldn't do a birthday party in this room?
You couldn't throw a birthday party in this room. The Girl Scouts can use this room, but you couldn't rent the room for a wedding or a birthday party, which is different than what we're talking about for like the town hall or potentially, I know the school rents out the auditorium for events and things, and I don't know if the police and fire do comparable renting out or.
Well, we've done MMA's used it, right? For classes and different
The police
associations with the Mass Police Chiefs have had trainings there, and
Well,
I
the
think
senior
they've
center is
had-
gonna have probably a kitchen that's
With
definitely gonna wanna
opportunity-
get,
with
so we're gonna have to have
opportunities
a
to do,
policy
yeah,
for
yeah,
that as well. Same.
We could copy them. I mean, Groton just went through that.
Yeah,
They added a new policy for renting out for,
I'll
bridal
investigate more what
showers.
the other, what Groton
Okay.
does and what.
Could be, or is there any interest in just restricting the use to municipal or nonprofit and not, and saying no to someone who privately wants to rent one of these rooms?
turn the taxpayers away for.
Well, I mean,
The town needs to be fair to everybody. You can't just say non-profit when you got the residents here. If they want to have say a 16-year-old birthday party or whatever, if you're gonna rent a non-profit, what distinguishes between a resident?
Well, I mean, we would do what the library does, which is, we don't charge, but you have to be a nonprofit to use it.
Libraries have always been different. No, they have, a common space, I mean, it's just historically, so I don't know.
Yes.
When we were touring senior centers that have been built recently, new ones, a lot of the towns, and I think Anthony will agree with, they told us that they rented out space and, you know, to help defray costs.
Okay.
And I remember Anthony, you were saying, well, who does the janitorial work and do they pay for that? And yes, you know, if the space is rented, they have to pay for the janitor.
So the cost of the janitor.
So, I don't know what we're gonna do back here, but I'm just saying, we heard that a lot of towns do that with their senior center spaces.
This has to be overhauled.
Right. So Mark, do you want to go forward
Yeah,
and investigate
I'll
what
investigate it.
other people are doing?
And I don't know where we're going with that, I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Right.
Just keep in mind, any municipal buildings that are that we have bonded, you can't make money off of them. The reason what they're charging for a fee to cover the cleaning. And, you know, and have a janitor on staff, and that's what the school department does. So
Yeah.
it's something we don't do, and which at times has posed a problem in the past with Chaddock Street, because it's been
not left the way it was found.
Right, thank you. And that just creates a lot of work for our one person that handles all our municipal buildings now. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right, secondhand items.
Yeah, so I know, Mark, I think you corresponded back and forth with the chief on this, maybe?
Yeah, I was asking, well, there was a lot of reviews, and we were asking whether or not they were worth, how many of the reviews we needed to do, and the police chief felt it was important to do the review for secondhand items.
The other thing too is the legal notice requirement.
So, yeah, I'm questioning when we don't have a local newspaper for a lot of things, why, if we're not required to do these legal notices, why we advertise these things for like secondhand and amusement devices and everything, where they say we have to do it. The policy says that we do it, and I'm questioning why we would. So, if there's not a legal reason to do them, should we continue?
There isn't. I don't think.
So I can ask town council that too, if we can forego the legal notice requirement.
Why are we singling out valuable secondhand item shops for review like this?
I think this policy probably went in place about the time that the pawn shops
You
went
have
in.
pawn shops all over the place.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah, so we get to review an application.
Okay,
and Make
all
sure
right.
that.
We can, then in that case.
Yeah, it's not for like a consignment store or an
Yeah,
antique
okay,
store,
it's
that
not
kind
an
of thing.
antique store.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once again.
Okay.
Why,
Right.
why weapons dealers aren't in here?
Were there
The
any
pawn
other
lobby
comments
isn't
on
as
that one,
well
Mark? Was there
organized.
anything else on that one?
No.
No.
But, so generally, it seems like people are in agreement that less is more on these, and we shouldn't have anything that we're not particularly doing.
Yeah. So if we want to get rid of the notification paragraph, but leave the rest.
Right.
Like-
So I'll ask town council if we
Yeah,
can do
okay.
that. I'll just run that by him.
Great.
And then we'll bring these back.
Thank you.
So that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Performance goals and evaluation tool. I would like to finalize the Anthony's review and the performance goals, which Cindy, you added one to, and I was looking for that earlier. Did you email that
I
to us?
emailed it to, yeah, all of you.
Okay.
Or I emailed you and I copied everybody.
Oh, there it is.
I just didn't know if it was more like, I don't know, specific, or if it was more project specific.
Well, the ones I came up with were both, actually, but so mine, did we not include it in the packet? My goals, I guess it's all in email right now.
Did anyone else comment?
No, no one else commented. Okay. So mine were budget process, bring a budget to special town meeting with a recommendation of the Select Board, Finance Committee, Town Administrator, and Finance Director. That would be a regular town meeting, I think. Coordinate with department heads to resolve their capital requests, hiring requests with an explanation of recommend, do not recommend for each one.
I don't think I have yours. I
Okay.
can't find them. Did you
Let's-
just recently send?
I sent it out on last Friday.
Last Friday, okay, that'll help.
No, I sent it out, no, it was several Fridays ago, because it was before the first implementation of this meeting, when we were gonna talk about these.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, but now I need to compare it to the one Cindy sent.
I think mine were more communication related.
Okay.
As opposed to project related. So I had just proposed providing the board with consistent weekly updates about issues, goals, matters, et cetera, discussed during weekly department head meetings as well as meetings with town council. If we could just be more informed about those things, because
I actually, one of mine was a weekly update as well.
Okay.
So that one, yes.
yeah, and just trying to just be more cognizant if somebody asks for something to be put on the agenda, to just follow through with that. And if there's a reason it can't be put on the agenda, just to maybe follow up with that board member.
So thinking about these now, I think that the instructions in the review were that they were very actionable and measurable. And that's why I focused on specific projects and/or specific deliverables in order to allow us to like evaluate them after a year.
Okay, I tried to word mine in that regard,
Okay.
Matthew. And just as far as, giving us more historical background, I know there's been some situations where things have come before the board, but we haven't had any look-back information. And for Chuck and I, we've been on the board for a little bit, so we're maybe a little bit more aware of what's going on. But for newer board members, I think sometimes if something's coming up that hasn't been before us before, that there is a history to it, it might be helpful just to have some more detailed information about it. I know, Anthony feels that if board members have a question, they can just ask, but I think sometimes just for our collective discussion purposes, it might be helpful just to have as much information as we can at hand.
Okay.
For that particular discussion.
Supporting documentation, Cindy. It's like supporting documentation.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to have more updates about projects brought forward by the board. This board brought forward the senior center project. I would just like us to maybe have that as a regular agenda item on a monthly basis, I think, just so that we know what's going on with the project.
About that one specifically?
Yeah, I just used that as an
was all-
example.
Oh, okay, but so I had that one specifically as one of my goals.
So you're gonna wanna have it ongoing projects, right? You don't wanna be, you wanna be measurable on all these things, right? So I don't know if you wanna identify, because, okay.
But I mean, like, next year, we'll do a different goal that may have a different project.
Okay.
Well, I'm just using, because I don't think, what other projects do we have before us
Well, I
right
had the
now?
tennis courts and the senior center on his list
Okay,
as
yeah.
two of mine.
So there you go.
But that's what I'm just saying, if you get specific on when you ask about performance, then things are coming up to me. We just added things right now.
No, I know.
Right?
I just was using that as an example, like
Yeah,
the
so-
senior center project.
Again, like, I want to make sure that they're measurable
Yeah.
and specific. So having like just go, like saying, updates about ongoing projects, I don't think is specific enough to like say, well, he achieved this or he didn't achieve this after the end of the year. Maybe it is, but maybe it isn't.
I just think it's ongoing projects. If we can, I think just getting a
okay.
monthly update about any project that is a select board initiative, it doesn't really need to identify the
Okay.
specific project. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the other thing so during our retreat, we talked about creating a town-wide organizational chart. And that was basically a specific project
Okay.
that we had talked about as a board. And actually during our retreat, we prioritized that, and we just haven't seen it.
An organizational chart.
Yeah, so I just wanted to maybe just bring that up. And
Okay.
just see if we could just get that, and if it can't be done, or it's in progress, just to give us an update about it.
So I was short one, so I can go back, I can send these around again and write them up, unless anyone else has any other input on it.
Yours are the budget process tennis courts.
Yes,
Senior Weekly
exactly.
update. The senior center, are we bringing an article for funding? That yours, what I have here, you says with the goal of bringing an article to town meeting in spring of 2023 for funding? We already have funding, right?
Yeah,
So-
yes, I don't recall why I put that one in. But I think manage the design build process and coordinate with that is.
That, the rest is fine,
The rest
yeah.
is okay, all right. I'll move
In the
that.
budget process where it says bring a budget to special town meeting, are you talking about the fall town meeting?
It should be regular town meeting and not special.
Okay, so,
Yep.
okay.
So I will adjust these. I will add ongoing projects as one. And I'll bring it back and we can have it in the packet and we can read through them and approve them.
Okay.
Okay. The other one was, and the other half of this though that I would like to finalize is the aggregate review, which I sent around with the note that I added in the email of like just specifying that the performance objectives were missing from that review. So I want to finalize that so that we can submit it and make it official.
Well, like the performance objectives we're discussing are as a result of that review.
That's as a result of that review,
Yeah,
correct?
that's how I, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, performance objectives.
But they're not
aren't-
part of that review.
Right, but they're not created every year to say what somebody wasn't doing or needs improvement on. There's performance objectives that are completely outside
Yeah.
of that. right?
Yeah, this is not, I mean, the
Okay.
performance objectives are not related
Yeah.
to the
They could be. but
aggregate
they're not.
review, but I wanted to finalize the aggregate
Yeah, okay,
review
okay.
as a second item.
And this was from your, in May, before we came
It
on
was
the board?
Yes,
right?
correct, yeah, from last year.
Thought it was-
Okay, thank you. All right, PMBC Manage the Senior Center Project.
Okay, so the PMBC would like us to make a motion to officially assign them the project. I forget the exact wording. I sent that to you, Anthony, before. It's on the PMBC website that they want, or the PMBC doesn't feel like they've been explicitly asked or chartered with managing the senior center project. So they would like us to explicitly authorize them to manage it so that they can feel like they're more actively involved.
So we've been consistent on the projects that we've done before the PMBC since I've been here, which calls for either select board to assign or town meeting.
Yes.
We've had an article that was passed.
Right.
And that was, so that in itself, according to what you said, it signs PMBC.
So they were assigned through the town meeting, but not explicitly from the select board, so they request that we explicitly.
Yeah, I just don't recall it
No,
happening
no,
for the
no.
library or.
I understand.
or Alumni Stadium, I
This
don't
is,
remember
this
those.
is a
but-
formality.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
The formality is we put a warrant article on the town meeting. It gets voted on by the town. There is their request for management.
I don't remember what the town meeting article said, whether it explicitly called them out or not.
It doesn't, but it's just, that's their charge though, so, but this is,
They-
I don't have any problem with this.
Yeah, you just take through the motion.
Okay.
I guess the question is,
I'm moving the motion.
are we pulling anyone off it? Like, right now, I was talking.
No.
No. I mean, do you think, like, right now, Liz, how much of her week, I tried to combine two today, but Marge, you might know.
So-
Is it dominating more of her time than it needs to because of her role? Is this going to help that situation?
The way the PMC works is the stakeholders are there in the room during their meetings when they're discussing whatever project it is, whether it's the school department,
Okay.
select board.
So how's it affecting the current group that meets? The planning committee that you're on and?
It's part of the everyday project, just like when we did any other project, you meet and you go through it.
Senior center building project?
Senior center, library,
So is the PMBC coming, how are they coming in on that, is what I'm trying to say? Currently,
they have
you
a
guys meet-
representative that sits in those meetings, Bob Romley.
They currently do. So how is this changing
It's not.
with this.
So doesn't change that at all. The only thing that I'm not suggesting we change it one way or another, but for some projects, like when we built the library,
Yeah.
the library had representatives that were on PMBC specifically, they could vote on the library articles. There is no one that's assigned outside of PMBC that would represent
The senior center.
The senior center.
So that should probably be someone on COA more than
So they could have, yes, there could be someone appointed from.
chair or the vice.
Like, yes. So they could appoint someone that would attend the PMBC meetings and have a vote, potentially, right,
I
on
don't,
the
I don't know when that
PMBC.
changed, because I served in the PMBC, and that was never, there was
That's what-
never, it was the body that was appointed by whichever, whether, I represented the school committee, and so I voted on every project, but my purpose for being there was to represent the schools, but
Right.
when other projects, the Houghton Building roof, I voted on that as well, because I was a member. We didn't appoint different people to represent the library or alumni field, or there was a school committee member, and there was PMBC members, and who else? That's it. That's the only other. The school's the only one that have representation.
So there's at least two projects that the library was different, and there's another one listed on the PMBC website that's different, and I forget what it is. It might have been someone from historical was on for the Houghton Building.
That's
I
not the
don't
charge of the
remember.
PMBC. That's not the construction of the PMBC, and that's not, it needs
Can I
to
ask-
be reviewed, I think.
Can I ask a question, please? What defines manage? So it's formally a sign request, authorize the PMBC to manage the senior center project. What does that mean?
Construction.
How would they manage the project?
They're going to approve any of the warrants that come up for, whether it be for, let's say Vertex is the OPM. If the Vertex needs to get paid or Commodore needs to get paid, they approve that.
PMBC wouldn't?
Yes.
Okay.
That's just one example, so they do a lot more than that, but that is one
Okay.
example.
No, thank you.
Yeah, this is outside my wheelhouse, so this is something that I was just curious, when do they get involved and why aren't they involved right from the get-go?
They're
It
kind of
sounds
like an
they
owner
were.
project
Anthony just-
manager, but we also, we have somebody that is specifically, there's only been one project that I'm aware of, that somebody from the PMBC, Joe Calentro for the police station, was our OPM. He represented the town and oversaw the project. But otherwise, we've always hired, some other entity that was an engineering firm or something that was our OPM. And with alumni, it was Gale Associates and Vertex. So, they kind of operate as our clerk of the works or owner's project manager.
So I'll read what's on the PMB website. It says, "The PMBC is responsible when authorized by the Board of Selectmen and/or town meeting for investigating and advising the town regarding the design, construction, reconstruction, alteration, or an enlargement of all buildings and facilities owned by the town or constructed on land leased or operated by the town." Additionally, it says, "The town meeting may authorize the appointment of a different and separate building or project committee with respect to a particular project." And there's two, one is the library and the other is the Long Lake Restoration Project, Long Store Restoration Project, which both had other members on them.
Voting members.
Yeah. There were two from the Historical Commission on the Long Lake Restoration and two from the library.
All right, so currently there's a board that's doing this with a representative from PMBC, which to me is different than PMBC being the board that meets, and then we have other representatives.
But does the PMBC approve the
That's
warrants?
We have a working group. PMBC can't do, right? Because we work full-time for the staff, for the town, and meetings happen during the day. We
Okay.
talk about the logistics as far as what Liz needs and so forth. The PMBC manages, as Chuck said, they handle the warrants, they handle other design questions. They're our kind of liaison, right?
Okay.
So right now, I think Mark's asking if it's just to permanently assign,
Okay.
make the official, that, I just don't remember doing that for any other project other than the library.
What is the language they use? Oversee or responsible for?
It's written in their
Investigating
charter
and advising.
that they have, whether it's done through the town meeting or whether it's done here. What's the
Right, it's
difference?
handled,
Let's
so
do
let's
it.
just do it, right.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this, I'm just trying to
I just
Sure
didn't know
this-
what their, when
clear
do
on
they
what we're
actually
voting
become
on.
the full managers? And so you guys eventually, your board's either going to dissolve?
We don't have
It's
a
a-
board.
it's a
We're not a
working
board.
group.
Your working group, excuse me, is just going to dissolve and PMBC is going to run?
I'd
Once,
skip the town
once
meeting part.
they start the project,
Yeah.
then
Authorize.
there'll be a representative from our office.
Sure.
Myself and Ryan would go to their weekly construction
Okay.
meetings. PMBC really takes over, and they, like, I always remember Joe Calentro being the guy that kind of does that, and we don't have to be there all the time at that point, because some of the stuff is just
yeah.
construction-related
Can I
stuff.
propose the motion?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Move the select board vote to authorize that the PMBC investigate and advise the town regarding the design, construction, reconstruction, alteration, or enlargement of the senior center and facilities related
There too.
thereto. Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. Is there further discussion, Gary?
As amended by Mr. Sanders?
As amended by Mr. Sanders. Is there
Thanks,
further
Chuck.
discussion, Gary? No? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion carries.
Let's
Thank
get
you.
it done.
Get her done. All right, Littleton Common revitalization.
Okay. I sent this out earlier today to everyone.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, great.
Thank you. So this was formed in 2020, basically to work on figuring out what the needs and benefits were for 550 King Street and things like that. There were representatives from Planning Board, Housing Trust, Transportation, Economic, Finance, the Select Board, there were 6 members, I think, so. I think we need to get this committee going again or something similar. Not necessarily a Littleton Common Revitalization Committee. What I would actually propose we have, I don't care what we call it so much, but we need to have a committee that of roughly these members that look at new development that's going into town. We'll just start with 550 King Street, but we can also say the station area or Durkee Farm, and figure out what the impact is to the town as far as any budgetary things like 550 is going to require us to hire a new DPW and a new firefighter and police, and it's going to have this economic gain to the town or things like that, that we're not really doing on any board level. We don't know, personally, I have no idea what we're planning on, what we think the growth is in the revenue from 50 or the expenses from it, or we can pick on any of these properties like I was at planning board meeting where they were talking about the Durkee Farm acceptance, and they were saying, well, now that the town is managing this, who's taking care of the stormwater areas that need mowing or making sure that, the purple loosestrife and things don't come in, and it's like, well, that's in the charge of the highway department. Well, does the highway department know that? Has anyone actually figured out what the resources the highway department would need, and so on and so forth for things like that? So I think we can start with 550 as one of the projects, but I think this is a more general committee and needs more general as in far as not a specific project, but I think we just need to start doing a better job of analyzing as growth comes to town, what the impact is on that growth. If we look back historically, we said when the point comes in, it's the nirvana and it's going to solve all our tax revenue problems, and we're talking about $1 million shortfall again. So we just need to start understanding these projects better when they come in. So.
If I may, Mr. Chair. So I don't disagree with you, Mark. I just want to clarify. So this committee was created to implement the Littleton Common roadmap, revitalization roadmap, which was a report that the planning board had put together with the help of a consultant. There's a bunch of action items at the end of that report with a specific matrix that talks about what the select board's supposed to be working on, what the planning board's supposed to be working on, what economic development committee is supposed to be working on. It's a really great report. I don't know if you've read it, but it's very detailed and it speaks to some of the things that you just brought up, but specifically relative to Littleton Common. So that's why we created this committee. But what happened was, at the time, we realized that we also had the Littleton Common Committee. And so we had we had the Economic Development Committee. So our thought process was, and I think this was maybe 1 or 2 years ago, that right now, until we get sewer on Littleton Common and all these projects coming forward, there wasn't really any purpose for the Littleton Common Committee specifically. Just as far as the revitalization committee, it kind of fell by the wayside for whatever reason. I don't know that we ever got the appointments from the committees that are listed on here, like the Housing Trust and TAC and EDC and things like that. But I don't disagree with what you're proposing.
It's just that you're saying it's a different committee, probably.
It would be a different committee, but I'm not, and I think there's definitely a need. I just look at what you brought up with Durkee and the stormwater. Like, I think planning board should take care of that piece of it, and I don't know that they do or they don't. I don't know either way. I think if you want to propose this, I think we need to reword the purpose of the committee.
I'm fine with doing that, rewording the purpose of the committee and the makeup of the committee. I just wanted to get the temperature and help on what we actually want it to be.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, like I said, we don't have any idea or I have no idea when 550 is built out, what we're expecting the impact to be on. We have an idea on the schools, because that's the question that everyone asks.
Right.
But no one asks, well, what's the impact on fire or police or,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's been asked, Mark. To the individual professionals, departments, right? I guess, I don't know, having this committee do that, that's, all right, so what's the effect on the schools? Are they really gonna know? I mean, are they really gonna know the effect on police and fire? We can determine, we're gonna probably need another police officer, another firefighter. I mean.
So I can say when we were going through the Littleton Station Area Committee process, revitalization process, I was chair of that committee at one point. We did bring in fire, we brought in police, we brought in highway.
Yeah.
They can speak to those statistics
They do.
and what the impact is gonna have on their departments. I think it's something we need to be more cognizant of. So if we had a committee that was their specific charge, I think it would be helpful in some respects, but I don't want to lose sight too of the revitalization roadmap, because I think once sewer does come in, there's going to be a lot of need for this other group or some group to monitor what's coming in based upon the information in that report as well. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean,
too.
what I like about, I'm not gonna call it an independent group, but a committee doing some of this, you're not going to maybe get the yes people, right? Like if you're asking a town employee, a police chief, a superintendent, a fire department, what's this gonna do? We're gonna get this done? And there might be a little bit of uncomfortableness there, I don't know. Whereas a committee can just kind of investigate that through other communities that have done it, work directly or indirectly with the police, fire, and schools, and give us those numbers.
Yeah.
The finance piece is different to me. Those projections are there. And they are projections, and it's, based on full occupancy and what they've drawn and what goes in there. They have a pretty good number of how that affects the town.
It does feel like the planning board should handle things like traffic and stormwater maintenance, and I mean, they should, right?
Well, they're going to come up with the plan, but then someone else has to be responsible for implementing it. They're going to come up with the needs and hopefully communicate them, but that doesn't mean that, that they can't hold.
who's checking the box?
Yeah, who's checking the box, who's saying that, just pick on Durkee, that says, well, the Durkee development's going to require us to hire another half a highway worker. They don't have the authority to hire that or have any influence over that. So someone needs to be monitoring that and says, when this development is fully built out, it might take, 5 years, but when that happens, we're going to be needing another highway
just
worker,
added
and we're
4
kind of
miles
tracking
of
it
road,
that way,
yeah.
right? Or, there's 4 more miles of road, and if you depreciate the cost of the road over, where you need this much more in our road improvement budget, right? So there's just that type of thing that I don't know where we're tracking.
Is that the sort of thing that when the road approvals go to the DPW should say yes or no based on, you know, their resources?
No, I'm not even saying that it's a yes or no. You're just gonna say, you know, we need to be tracking that as we add more miles of road, then we need to up our roadway budget and our snow removal budget and all of these other things that there's not necessarily a conscious effort for, right? And we just need more of a plan for how we're going to do these
And
things.
they may very well track that, we're just not getting all that, we're not compiling all that
Right.
information in one spot.
That could be, right? I don't, if that information exists, I don't know where it
He knows
exists.
exactly how many miles of road they plow and what that equates to in hours.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So it's, yeah, it's just a matter, right.
But now you add sidewalks to this and we plow the sidewalks and I don't know if it got that detailed, but I do know, I mean, the town survived this far.
No, I'm
These
not
things.
saying,
So, right.
I think it would help us more in the planning process than
Yeah.
anything else.
No, you're right.
If we knew more of this information as
Yeah.
things were happening. I'm not suggesting we stop the developments or try and halt anything. It's just like, as these things happen, it would be nice to be able to plan for what the ramifications are.
Well, let's name the committee then.
So do you want to?
That's not gonna work.
Well, do you want to come back and like, do you want to formulate?
Sure, I'll get it more.
A charter?
More of a charter.
Yeah, like a more of a charge
I like
for the
it.
committee and then we can discuss it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Great.
true town impact committee almost. On
Yeah,
this project.
something like that.
Development impact.
Town project
Committee.
impact
Yeah.
committee or.
Okay, lease extension for the VFW.
This is annually we do this, so the extension that you have in there runs from November through next November.
Are we using this?
Yeah.
Like who's?
Using the VFW?
Yeah, like who, like what, are there town
Yep,
boards?
so
that
the,
are
yeah,
using it?
Veterans agent.
The Boy Scouts have used it, used the space. I know that they've had, town department retirement parties there.
Oh, yeah.
They've used the space. At one point, I know, some of the athletic groups were using the space. Yeah, so the
Dinner
space,
for like awards dinners or something like that.
yeah,
Veterans agent
Yeah.
uses it.
What for?
Yeah, for John, I don't know how long he's gonna, once obviously the senior center goes in, I know they have.
he's using it for,
Oh,
kind
he's
of like
using it as,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
But they're gonna have a
Like
full
meeting
space, I
space.
believe. Was that the senior center part of it?
He's gonna have an office, but when we get requests for town hall, we like to point them in that direction, because we really don't have the space, and we have a lot going on, and we're getting larger and running out of space, so we're always saying, geez, can you utilize the VFW? So we constantly point people in that
Okay, good.
direction.
That's great to know. All right.
I know it's hugely valuable to the town, and I know they're working with Acton and Harvard as well.
The VFW there.
Yeah,
That post
yeah.
is, okay.
Right.
Yep.
Move the select board vote to approve the one-year lease agreement with Littleton Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 6556 Incorporated, a Massachusetts nonprofit corporation located at 21 Taylor Street, for non-exclusive right of access to the property for the purposes of holding meetings and other events.
second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. The RFIs. Phew. I would actually, like more time to read through these.
Yeah, we didn't expect, you had a large packet this
Yeah.
week, so we just figured this is something that, we can digest and then set up another point in time to go through.
I haven't had a chance to read through them. I'm fascinated that we got these back.
Oh,
I
it's
think
amazing that
really
we got
cool.
3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanna look through them all and like really find them.
Yeah, so we can
Okay.
schedule this for another
So,
meeting.
That
and
would
this
be
can, and we can talk more about what you were talking about now that we have 3 with competitive.
Yeah, there's some
hopefully
really interesting
Speak a little more towards the
responses.
affordability piece as well.
Yeah.
Can we get a copy of the actual RFI? I found it online, but I didn't see the actual.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to do it. If you just go to our procurement page and you sign up, you get a copy that way.
Oh, I
But
can do it that.
But the other way is we can send you a copy.
I didn't know
I
if it
like
was
that
still
way.
valid.
Chuck doesn't wanna sign up for anything.
If I did that, Anthony, I didn't know if it was still valid, like if it would still let me get a copy of it that way.
Yeah, we'll just send you a copy. too.
Okay.
I think it was we had it in another meeting, we can dig that up.
All right, cool.
And I was
Okay.
curious if anyone here, like on the board that's been on maybe a little bit, knows the other companies that put in.
MAPC, I mean.
I just don't know those.
MAPC's like they're
Met-
all over the place. I
Yeah.
mean, they're.
Metro West.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Metro West MAPC, they do
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Metro West Partnership, not
Collaborative, Metro West Collaborative.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was,
MAPC is different than
Okay.
Metro West Housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there were actually 4 in the packet, right, not 3?
three.
Three.
Because
Three.
one,
Three.
there's a property management company for the first one that looks like another one.
Yeah, that's where I got confused.
Yeah, I think they were just
Because I
saying
couldn't-
like, we're gonna build it and this is the property
Yeah,
manager.
they
and it's gonna
basically
run it.
handed over to the property
Right.
It
manager.
was, yeah, the breaks were unclear in the,
Yeah,
between the,
okay.
they renumbered.
Meeting minutes of October 11th. Everyone, comments, changes, updates?
No.
Anyone? All right,
Move the select board vote to approve the meeting minutes of October 11th, 2022, contingent on the inclusion of the listing of meeting exhibits.
Second.
motion made by Chuck, seconded by Mark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Chuck, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you back on November 7th.